Chapter 761, Vulcan vs. Fire Dragon. Dumbledore stood amidst the flames like a deity, his mastery of magic unparalleled. Vulcan clears the way. The fire dragon clears the way. John, with a swift wave of his wand, conjured a golden flame dragon that soared towards Dumbledore. It was a clash of titans, Vulcan against fire dragon, in a spectacular fiery duel. Dumbledore, wielding his wand with the precision of a swordsman, countered effortlessly. He swung his hand upward, transforming the flame into chains that ensnared the fire dragon, halting its advance. With a forceful point of his wand, the chained fire dragon seemed to suffer a mighty blow, its form recoiling and collapsing. "How does it feel to be youthful again, Dumbledore?" John taunted as the golden flame erupted, sending 3 fire dragons soaring only to plummet down, engulfing the ground in a sea of flames. "It's quite the novel experience," Dumbledore replied, unfazed. With his left hand, he conjured a powerful iron armor curse, creating a barrier that isolated the inferno. Plunging his wand into the earth, he declared, "All curses end, finite." Golden light fissured through the ground, piercing the fire dragon. Dumbledore stood, a godlike figure wielding a luminous blade, cleaving the malevolent dragon from beneath. John's eyes narrowed, his pupils transforming as he cast Reducto. A beam of white light, akin to a sword of judgment, surged towards Dumbledore, only to be repelled by an even stronger iron armor curse, a testament to Dumbledore's formidable magical prowess. The land around them vanished, consumed by the battle, as Dumbledore redirected the destructive light back into the flames, vanishing from sight. The environment began to shift, objects levitating as if caught in an unseen storm. Suddenly, half of the Nurmengard Tower morphed into a slender whip, lashing out to bind the 3 fire dragons. Vulcan re-emerged, clashing with the fire dragon in a spectacular display of power. As they entwined and devoured each other, a burst of red light broke free, hurtling towards John. John dodged, only to witness the red light transform into a phoenix that soared past him. Reacting swiftly, he drew the silver Wick sword with his right hand, slicing the phoenix in 2. "Level 7 disarming curse," he muttered, admiring the ingenuity of the spell. Dumbledore, having reached the zenith of his power, found his aging body struggling to contain his growing magical strength. He had faced Voldemort, his capabilities hindered by age and curse alike. Yet in this moment, spurred by John's challenge, Dumbledore rediscovered his peak form. The greatest wizard of the age stood amidst the flames, his wand conducting a fierce symphony of magic. As fate and storm intertwined, flame and ocean crafted a vivid totem, marking them as timeless remnants, mysterious inheritors of an ancient legacy. Dumbledore, drawing upon the magic unleashed by John, began to master this newfound power, embracing the thrill of all-out combat, a concept once foreign to him. Their duel escalated, with Dumbledore unleashing red lightning towards John, who countered with white lightning of his own. Their magic clashed, creating a vacuum before exploding in a shower of flames that fell into the sea, where fire and water waged an endless battle. Both wizards raised their defenses simultaneously. John was encased within a protective circle, while Dumbledore summoned his guardian spirit, the Phoenix, to shield him. Even the distant Sky Castle felt the impact of their clash, the shockwaves stirring the sea into a frenzy. Mycroft, observing from his cruise ship, squinted as the vessel rocked violently, caught in the tumultuous sea stirred by the unleashed energies of the 2 combatants. The technical analyst stared at the screen, his eyes wide with fear. "These are 2 people? It's like watching 2 arsenals launching missiles at each other." At this moment, Dumbledore was the most formidable wizard John had ever encountered. Even the despicable High Urbo couldn't match Dumbledore's prowess. Holding the Elder Wand, Dumbledore wielded level 7 magic power and spells, making his attacks formidable. If Dumbledore were to face Voldemort now, John believed he wouldn't need to intervene. Dumbledore could defeat Voldemort single-handedly, assuming Voldemort had no Horcruxes. Dumbledore had refrained from killing Voldemort in the past due to the difficulty in locating his Horcruxes. It was deemed safer to have Voldemort potentially reborn in some corner of the world than to have him trapped in an inescapable situation. "Excellent magic," John remarked, waving his hand to disperse the smoke and dust around him. "It would have been a pleasure to learn from you during my school years." "I'm sorry I didn't make your school years happier," Dumbledore replied, lowering his wand as white smoke curled from its tip. That's not necessary, John said, raising an eyebrow. It's just a fleeting thought. He then moved again, this time raising the sword in his right hand while holding a staff in his left. This familiar stance momentarily dazed Dumbledore, but he quickly recovered, waving his wand to unleash a barrage of transfigured birds and flames at John. The birds, densely packed, swooped down towards John, ready to tear him apart upon contact. John vanished and reappeared behind Dumbledore, his sword slicing through the air. The silver light of his blade was dazzling as it struck a statue that materialized out of nowhere. The statue, which bore a striking resemblance to Lockhart, complete with opulent attire and a decorative sword, came to life. "Hey, that's me," Lockhart said with a smirk, which froze as his statue was decapitated by John's swift strike. The severed head flew towards John, who used a spell to hurl it at Dumbledore like a baseball. A silver shield blocked its path, but the force of the impact sent both the shield and the headless statue crashing down. Suddenly, a silver-white phoenix grasped John's right hand. "Land of Eternity," John muttered, coming back to his senses as the golden light from his wand immobilized the Patronus. Then, an endless Mobius ring appeared, trapping the Patronus in a perpetual loop of landing. With his right hand enveloped in darkness, John's gaze fixed on Dumbledore, who felt as if he were staring down a basilisk. Dumbledore, feeling an overwhelming force rendering him immobile, waved his wand, summoning a swarm of bees from the ground. The bees, ignited by flame, flew towards John. John responded by unleashing tens of thousands of black silk threads from his right hand, which pierced through the bees and halted just in front of Dumbledore. Dumbledore had raised his wand like a shield, creating an impenetrable barrier. Transfiguration came into play once more, this time with John surrounded by a multitude of snakes emerging from the ground. Dumbledore, not to be outdone, gestured with his free hand, summoning a tidal wave that engulfed the snakes and dragged them into the sea. Suddenly, Dumbledore's expression turned grave. He grabbed his robe and twirled, disappearing from sight. A golden silk thread appeared in his place, opening a portal that exerted a suction force, drawing objects into it. Sensing Dumbledore's location, John didn't hesitate to attack once more. He unleashed a barrage of white light, wave after wave, forcing Dumbledore out of hiding. As Dumbledore countered with a vanishing curse that altered the ground beneath John's feet, John stumbled but quickly regained his footing, ready to face Dumbledore's next move. In this confrontation, John found himself at the mercy of the levitating charm, becoming an unwitting target suspended in midair. Dumbledore, with a grave expression that hinted at an internal struggle, took a decisive stance. With a firm grip on his wand, he summoned water from all directions, converging into a formidable sphere that ensnared John, leaving him trapped within a colossal orb of water floating ominously in the sky. But Dumbledore's assault was far from over. A flicker of reluctance flashed in his eyes, quickly supplanted by a steely resolve. His wand crackled with red lightning, morphing into a spear that hurtled towards John with deadly precision. This was no ordinary water prison spell. The water didn't merely encase John, it constricted around him with crushing force, threatening to suffocate him. Grappling with the intense pressure, John managed to wield his sword, albeit with great difficulty. Just as the red lightning spear neared, he executed a desperate maneuver. A golden slash cleaved through the air in front of him, swallowing the lightning, which then re-emerged far away in the western United States. There, it ignited a massive fissure, unleashing a torrent of destructive energy. The impact of such a force would have been catastrophic for John. In a critical moment, a silver light flickered behind him. With a burst of strength, John's body pierced through the aquatic prison, and he unfurled his wings to halt his flight. The silver wick, taking the form of an albatross, soared out of the water sphere, symbolizing John's narrow escape from a dire predicament. John's heart raced with the adrenaline of the encounter. He sensed the profound implications of their clash, a feeling that hinted at deeper layers of conflict yet to be uncovered. Chapter 762, God and God Killer. Lucius Malfoy gazed upward, noting the sudden shift in weather. It had been a clear day, but within moments, darkness enveloped the sky. Even the muggles in the distance took notice of this abrupt change. What's going on? A technician exclaimed in confusion, tapping a malfunctioning instrument. There wasn't supposed to be a thunderstorm today. Muggles had become adept at predicting the weather, yet today their technology was rendered useless by an unforeseen anomaly. There's interference, the technician announced, his voice laced with concern. We're experiencing strong energy fluctuations that are disrupting all our instruments. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as he frantically attempted to rectify the situation through his expertise. This is bad. All the ship's instruments have failed, he declared, panic setting in among the group of top agents. Stranded in the middle of the ocean, the failure of their equipment meant they were without power, and without rescue, they faced the grim prospect of being trapped at sea indefinitely. In stark contrast to their panic, Mycroft Holmes remained calm, silently observing the tumultuous dark clouds above, from which lightning streaked across the sky. It was clear that electromagnetic interference was to blame for the failure of their instruments. They had always considered themselves masters of their domain, yet faced with this display of nature's manipulation, they felt as powerless as their ancestors. The sky seemed to collapse into the dense clouds, and from this chaos, enormous albatrosses entwined with thunder and lightning descended like deities. John, wielding the Elder Wand, couldn't help but laugh. "It's my turn, Dumbledore," he declared, his voice echoing with a sense of retribution for a past near-death experience. Spreading his wings, John became enveloped in lightning, transforming into a beam of light that shattered the darkness and struck from above. The intense heat rendered the thunder and lightning indestructible. Dumbledore hastily erected a barrier, only to be overwhelmed by the thunderbolt. The electromagnetic activity radiated from Nurmengard, causing a widespread anomaly. Residents near the sea found themselves in darkness as power was cut off and even the largest of facilities ground to a halt. The next moment, a violent wind, more fierce than before, emanated from Nurmengard, sending a massive wave outward. As the wave expanded, it grew to a towering 10 meters in height. "Everyone, hold on tight," a seasoned agent shouted, rushing to Mycroft's side. The cruise ship tilted forward as the colossal wave approached, instilling fear in the hearts of those aboard. Despite the panic, the ship's substantial weight and stability prevented it from capsizing, sparing everyone on board. Could a wizard have caused this? The question hung in the air, not just among muggles, but wizards as well. The display of power left everyone in awe, questioning the vast disparity in magical ability among their own kind. Yet, no one had the answers. Such power suggested that these were not ordinary wizards of their time. The era itself had shaped everything, instilling a deeper fear and respect for their king. Ludwig's expression turned grave as he lost his composure and dashed into the castle towards the fireplace. "Back to the castle," he commanded, witnessing the destruction wrought by the albatross. Dumbledore, poised to retaliate, found the castle retreating on command. Some were dissatisfied, having not witnessed the full extent of the battle, but they would soon realize that Ludwig's decision had saved them all. John continued to summon lightning from the sky, the albatross hovering over Dumbledore like a protective guardian. His heart raced as the albatross, as immovable as Mount Tai, descended, transforming into a pillar of red fire that soared towards the heavens. Vulcan himself seemed to clear the path, reappearing with renewed vigor. This time, Dumbledore's wand emitted billowing white smoke, struggling against terror, the force of the lightning. The flames ascended, intertwining with the lightning until they exploded in a fiery spectacle that painted the sky red. Nurmengard found itself encircled once more, and Dumbledore, with arms outstretched, allowed himself to be lifted into the air, embracing flight. This spectacle, once a hallmark of Voldemort's reign, now marked a new chapter in the saga of wizards and their boundless power. In the midst of their confrontation, Dumbledore and John regarded each other with a sense of solemnity. Dumbledore, with a gesture as casual as adjusting his spectacles, stroked his nose. With a soft click, the nose previously broken by a punch realigned itself, signaling his readiness to move beyond past grievances. John, unable to contain his excitement, chuckled. "I'm looking forward to this even more." He raised his sword, and a silver glow rapidly enveloped his arm. "Show me the full extent of your magical prowess." Dumbledore, eyeing John with a mixture of curiosity and caution, inquired, "Do you wish to proceed, John?" "Of course," John replied, his smile broadening. He revealed a gemstone embedded on the back of his hand. "I can't wait, Albus. To me, death is but a mere journey, one I've already encountered." As the battle intensified, it became evident that their values and priorities diverged significantly. For once, Dumbledore refrained from lecturing, a rarity for him. They stood opposite each other, wands at the ready. When red clashed with white, a cascade of reactions ensued. Dumbledore's flames encircled John, who countered with a golden Mobius ring that shielded him from all harm. John relinquished his grip on the silver Wick sword, reaching instead for the resurrection stone. An invisible force emanated from it, catching Dumbledore off guard. Descending from the altar, Dumbledore's presence instilled fear. A gray haze clouded his eyes, yet his wand continued to emit powerful magic. The wand itself seemed to burn, sacrificing its essence for the sake of their decisive confrontation. "I am a fire dragon," John declared. The silver Wick sword burst into golden flames, transforming into a dragon that pierced through Dumbledore's defenses and unleashed a fiery breath. Dumbledore, quick to react, deflected the attack with a twist of his wand. "Wand protector," John surmised, impressed by Dumbledore's dedication. "There is no pain in surrender, Dumbledore," John stated, flicking his wand. The stalemate was broken as a white orb formed at the tip of his wand, signaling a fully charged attack. As John summoned the silver Wick sword back into his hand, he unfurled golden wings that sliced through the flames, closing the distance between them. Dumbledore's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but as the white light approached, clarity returned. He hastily erected protective barriers, but they were no match for John's relentless assault. In a last-ditch effort, Dumbledore vanished using apparition, but the protective spells dissipated the moment he disappeared. In the ensuing white light, a glint of cold steel emerged. Flames danced along the sword's blade, creating a spectacle of light and heat. Time seemed to slow as the blade inched closer to Dumbledore, who had not yet completed his escape. The cold bite of the sword was immediately followed by the searing heat of the flames. In this moment, Dumbledore faced his challenger, a godslayer stepping down from the altar to confront his deity. Chapter 763, The End of an Era, A New Era Begins. The Sky Castle stood as a testament to the monumental shift in the landscape, leaving everyone in awe and fear. The duel between the strongest wizards had laid bare the vast chasm of power that existed between them. Old Goyle, lost in thought, was suddenly interrupted by Old Crab, who asked curiously, "What are you thinking about?" "I was considering." Old Goyle glanced around at the gathered wizards and shared his insight. "If we were to be attacked right now, would it end up like that incident in Bhutan?" He was referring to the catastrophic event when Muggle weapons had decimated the wizarding world's upper echelon, nearly leading to its downfall. It took Old Crab a few moments to understand the gravity of the situation. Looking around, he saw the Old Union, the International Federation of Wizards, and many other wizards holding significant positions. "That makes sense," he agreed solemnly. "We'd stand no chance." Old Goyle nodded, satisfied with his analysis. Meanwhile, Lucius could only shake his head in disbelief at his companion's grim humor. The battle raged on, with flames of gold and red intertwining, each seeking dominance. John's sword pierced Dumbledore's chest, a single drop of blood tracing a path down the blade before falling to the ground. As it touched the soil, it transformed into bloodshot tendrils, seeking out the dormant rose seeds below, giving them new life with its nourishment. John inspected the wound on his chest, a stark reminder of the battle's intensity. The silver phoenix, caught between him and Dumbledore, had prevented the sword from inflicting a fatal blow. Dumbledore, too, was in disbelief, having been forced into a reactive stance for the first time in his life. John, recovering swiftly, sliced through the silver phoenix and launched another attack. Dumbledore managed to cast a protective spell, but was still thrown back, only saving himself from a fatal fall with a shock-absorbing charm. As John landed, he covered his wound, which miraculously healed as the blood reabsorbed into his body. Dumbledore watched in amazement, acknowledging the feat. John, acknowledging his own uniqueness, wiped the blood from his sword, indicating that Dumbledore, too, was beyond ordinary. Dumbledore, looking at his unhealable wound, realized the gravity of his situation. John, with a calm demeanor, declared there would be no second chances. He then questioned Dumbledore's regrets. Dumbledore, his face showing a mix of emotions, expressed no regret. He had always cared deeply for his students, despite his shortcomings. "I'll be proud of you, John," he said with a genuine smile, acknowledging the complexity of their relationship and the paths they had chosen. Gryffindor saw John as a brave lion, while Grindelwald envisioned him as the king of the wizarding world. Dumbledore, however, hoped John Wick would simply be himself. He didn't need to conform to anyone's expectations. He was just John Wick. When a Slytherin student entered the fray, he saw in the mirror of Erised a reflection of his deepest desire. John took a deep breath, his expression unreadable, his right hand trembling slightly. Was it because he admired the person he once was? Yet his hand was remarkably steady, as if it was only accustomed to the weight of the Elder Wand, the object of his deepest longing. The power he had always craved was now within his grasp. His eyes darkened as he released his grip, allowing the sword of Silver Wick to pierce the ground effortlessly, striking a rose seed and marking the end of its nascent life. "My respects, Dumbledore," John said, his voice tinged with regret. "Let's conclude this in the most direct and solemn manner possible. I'm not sure if we will both see the dawn, but at this moment our mutual respect shines the brightest." Dumbledore responded with a smile. "Of course, John Wick of Slytherin, Hogwarts, and the wizarding world, John Wick." They agreed to end their absurd cause and remarkable duel with mutual respect, without the need for physical contact, as that would be the greatest insult to a wizard. They wanted to show the utmost respect to one another. "Come then, elderly First King, your brilliance once illuminated the magical world. You've endured suffering, experienced loss, and parted ways with those you loved. Expelliarmus! Reducto!" There were no fierce cries, only the calm and determined gaze shared between them. Red and white magic collided once more, creating a vast magical field over Nurmengard, silencing the world. Dumbledore's wand was pushed to its limits, emitting white smoke, while the Elder Wand communicated with John, eager for a life worthy of its honor. It absorbed magical power greedily, like an insatiable sponge, symbolizing strength, loyalty to its master, and indifference to all else. It protected its owner, but would decisively abandon them upon their defeat, always seeking the strongest master. The clash of red and white magic eventually ceased. When the magical field shattered, the released energy caused a blackout in the nearby coastal city. One of them fell. In the sky, 3 birds flew, and between the shades of black and white, a red phoenix cried out in sorrow. Dumbledore was defeated, unable to withstand the rise of a new king despite his youthful body. He would be the last of the old kings in the era of the new king. In the War of 3 Kings, only one remained standing, the strongest. John approached Dumbledore, who lay on the ground, his hair rapidly turning white as his magical power was drained, and the benefits of the Holy Grail vanished. John stood beside Dumbledore, who smiled even in defeat. John raised his right hand, and the sword that had touched the rose seed vanished, only to reappear in his hand as the sword of Silver Wick. He gently touched Dumbledore with the tip of the sword. "Is there anything else you want to say?" John inquired. Dumbledore, his breathing labored, looked up at the sky as the dark clouds parted, allowing a sliver of twilight to shine through. He gazed at the ruins of Nurmengard, reminiscent of the day he had sent people there. "John, be yourself," Dumbledore said with a smile. "You're only 18 years old." John looked at him silently, the sword in his hand raised as Dumbledore's final moments unfolded under the twilight sky. He closed his eyes in relief, understanding that his efforts had not been in vain. He, too, was a martyr, waiting for the moment to come to an end. He wondered what had become of Grindelwald. A gentle breeze caressed his cheeks, smoothing his features and bringing with it a familiar scent. However, the wind from Godric's Hollow could not reach him here. The sword lowered, dusk was inevitably departing. The cold, silvery moonlight, mingled with the blood that had been shed, forbade anything from lingering after dusk. "Stay here, Dumbledore," John said, his eyes as calm as moonlight, reflecting off a serene lake. He slowly drew his sword, lifting his head to gaze at the sky Dumbledore had just observed. As dusk ended and the same sky stretched overhead, Some saw the twilight sky tinged with red, while others noticed the bright, beautiful stars and moon adorning the night sky. Chapter 764, The New King of the Magic World. The new king ascends the throne in a ceremony devoid of fireworks or applause, with only the moonlight as a congratulatory gift and the starlight as a present. The Sky Castle departs from Nurmengard, and Mycroft also leaves on the restored cruise ship. They have witnessed the enthronement of the king, a moment that promises brilliance for the wizarding world and a re-evaluation for the muggle world. Beneath the lonely tower, where only one person remains, Dumbledore slowly opens his eyes. He realizes he had never truly understood the boy named John Wick. He was mistaken. John Wick didn't need martyrs, whether as the king of the wizarding world or a student of Hogwarts. John Wick is simply John Wick, a name that doesn't require any prefixes. With a smile that is both lonely and relieved, Dumbledore admits to himself, "I'm really a fool." He touches his wounds, which could not be healed by the sword of Silver Wick, and finds them miraculously healed. The blood of the king has given this old man, who had stepped down from the throne, a new lease on life. The burdens that once belonged to Dumbledore have been lifted. The old man, who had metaphorically died twice, sits up, unfazed by the cold moonlight. He notices a tender bud breaking through the soil, a rose seed reborn. Approaching it cautiously, he touches it gently, like a clumsy gardener. Nurmengard drifts aimlessly on the ocean. The new king, John Wick, has finally shown mercy to the old man. It is an act of kindness, but also a punishment. Dumbledore has been exiled, abandoned by the entire wizarding world, meaning he is no longer the Dumbledore of the wizarding world. He is simply Dumbledore, Ariana's older brother. "I have received your kindness, King," Dumbledore acknowledges, understanding everything as he stands up. The place, devastated by battle, begins anew with that rose. Meanwhile, in Godric's Hollow, Grindelwald sits blankly on a chair in the courtyard of Dumbledore's house, staring at the door. He suddenly realizes he may never see that person emerge from the door again. Confused and at a loss, Grindelwald reflects on his loneliness. Despite his intelligence, he cannot escape his emotions. To him, the Dumbledore family house seems like a man-eating monster, embodying his loneliness. Laughing loudly and impudently, Grindelwald acknowledges his loneliness. The laughter, muffled by the grass, sounds both like laughter and crying. After 2 months of insanity in Godric's Hollow and a half-century of mutual confession in Nurmengard, he realizes how impoverished his life has been, having only ever truly known the Red Rose. With the tower collapsed and the rose taken away, he is left with nothing. Tired of laughing, Grindelwald wipes away the dewdrops, which seem both cold and frosty, and spits out the grass from his mouth, the taste of blood serving as his dinner. He opens the door to find the interior untouched since 1889, preserving all traces of the past. The box that used to narrate their story has been torn apart by battle. Grindelwald sits in the living room, indifferent to the heavy dust staining his dirty clothes, with broken grass in his white hair and a future unseen in his strange-colored eyes. He sits motionless, like a stone statue in a dark house, lost in the depths of his memories and the profound sense of loss that envelops him. Grindelwald had never yearned for death as much as he did in that moment. "Is this the punishment you've bestowed upon me, my king?" he wondered. Martyrs were not sacrificed in this manner. The king had inflicted upon him a curse that numbed his heart and made breathing a struggle, condemning him to eternal solitude. He longed to close his eyes forever. The doors and windows rattled, and the fiery phoenix descended. Grindelwald, forced by the piercing light, opened his eyes. The phoenix, Fawkes, would depart after Dumbledore's demise, awaiting the emergence of the next Dumbledore in need of assistance. But why was it here now? Grindelwald slowly extended his hand, and Fawkes tilted his head, observing. Despite the scorching flames that burned his finger, Grindelwald persisted, finally touching the fiery feathers. This encounter was real. It dawned on him that the king of the magical world's loneliness was not the only form of punishment. There were cruelties far greater. Yet in this moment, Grindelwald found a twisted satisfaction. "What a merciful and cruel king," he mused, smiling genuinely for the first time in a long while. Becoming a king required several steps. The first was to destroy the world, the second to rebuild it, and the third to vanquish the predecessor. John had accomplished all these. Thus, he ascended to kingship, and his reign was acknowledged worldwide. The International Wizarding Union, recognizing John's strength, had no choice but to accept the new king. Only a potent ruler could safeguard the fragile magical world. They proclaimed John Wick as the new king, a declaration that resonated across the globe. Dharma Alex, after a restful night, woke up rejuvenated. He was eager to embark on a significant endeavor with his apprentice. "Teacher, have you heard?" the apprentice inquired. Dharma Alex, assuming the news pertained to a new product from the neighboring alchemy department, responded, "Do you know what's paramount for a potion master?" Caught off guard, the apprentice realized this was a teaching moment, a rare opportunity to learn directly from a master without spending a fortune. "What is it?" he asked eagerly. "It's the state of mind," Dharma Alex explained, unfazed by any turmoil. "A potion master must always remain composed, even if the world around them is falling apart." The apprentice nodded in understanding, recognizing the importance of temperament in their craft, a lesson he wouldn't forget. Satisfied with his first batch of apprentices, Dharma Alex entered the great hall of the potions department, where he found the apprentices abuzz with excitement. His presence immediately restored order, as one apprentice stepped forward, admonishing the others to maintain their composure in light of the recent news about Lord Wick's duel with Dumbledore and his ascension as the king of the wizarding world. They were reminded to emulate Mr. Belby's calm demeanor. However, upon hearing the news himself, Dharma Alex was taken aback. Grabbing the apprentice by the shoulders, he demanded confirmation, his eyes red with disbelief and urgency. The apprentice confirmed the news, explaining that Dharma Alex had been asleep during the pivotal event. Overwhelmed by the revelation, Dharma Alex lost his composure, realizing the gravity of the moment he had missed. The potions department descended into chaos, unable to contain their head, who was now frantically seeking more information, his mind racing with the implications of this monumental shift in the wizarding world. Screams echoed through the halls of Hogwarts. "Quick, stop him!" someone shouted. "Use the sleeping spell," another voice added. "Merlin's beard, how can he run so fast with his weight?" a bewildered voice questioned. "Professor Hagrid, grab him!" Professor McGonagall urged, her voice laced with urgency, as Hagrid stumbled in his attempt to comply. No one could have anticipated the burst of energy that Professor Slughorn displayed upon reading the morning's newspaper. In the chaos, Professor Flitwick was caught off guard and, failing to see Slughorn's sudden move, was knocked unconscious onto the table. Left with no other choice, Professor McGonagall called upon Hogwarts' ultimate solution, a bear hug from Hagrid. With this, Slughorn was finally subdued and taken to the school hospital. Upon hearing the news, Madame Pomfrey was aghast, initially believing that someone had cast a confusion charm on Slughorn to launch a sneak attack. The thought of the esteemed headmaster of Hogwarts acting so erratically was beyond her comprehension. Hagrid, rubbing his bruised stomach, muttered, "John defeated Dumbledore. I never thought he was so powerful." "Hush," Professor McGonagall quickly interjected, casting a wary glance at Slughorn, who lay on the hospital bed. "Don't let Horace hear you." Slughorn felt utterly humiliated. He was the only one among his peers who had never attended any of the magic school's gatherings, and the reason for his absence was as ludicrous as it was embarrassing. He wished for nothing more than to disappear into a crack in the bed, away from the judgmental eyes of his colleagues. Chapter 765, The World Praises the New King. A new morning dawned, signaling a change in the world. Mr. Weasley rose early, starting his day with a routine of brushing his teeth and washing his face. The splash of cold water on his face quickly dispelled the remnants of sleep. "Good morning, boys," he greeted his two sons cheerfully as he descended the stairs, feeling refreshed. In the kitchen, Mrs. Weasley was busy preparing breakfast. George, with a mischievous glance towards his mother, covertly sprinkled pepper into Charlie's milk. Unaware of the prank, Charlie took a sip and immediately choked, coughing uncontrollably. At home, there were 3 Weasley children: Charlie, who was staying due to work commitments, Ron, who was awaiting Auror training, and George, who was yet unmarried. The 3 of them, all single, navigated their daily lives under their parents' roof. Ron had left the house early under the guise of exercising, secretly hoping to avoid Mrs. Weasley's potential scolding. Mrs. Weasley had previously lectured George at length for his clandestine participation in the war, though her words were tinged with pride, a sentiment shared by Mr. Weasley. Spotting an opportunity, Mr. Weasley asked George, "Anything good to say today, George?" He recalled a time in Diagon Alley when he had seen George engaging flirtatiously with a girl, hinting at possible developments. "Good news?" George responded, clearing his throat dramatically. "Attention, please, it's time for Weasley news." As Mrs. Weasley served the fried bacon, George announced, "According to the latest reports, the people have welcomed their new king. John Wick defeated Dumbledore and has officially become the first king of the wizarding world," George declared with a laugh. Mr. Weasley, slicing into his bacon, chuckled heartily. "Very good news, if only it were true." "It is true," George insisted, his playful demeanor fading. "Wick achieved this feat in front of everyone, including the 28 ancient clans." "Stop joking, George. Why wasn't I informed?" Mr. Weasley's laughter faded, assuming it was merely a jest. "Because Percy was the one who went." "Dad, don't you see? Who in the old alliance sees you as the Weasley patriarch?" George retorted, prompting Mr. Weasley to pause, taken aback. "Percy?" Mr. Weasley pondered, realization dawning. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," George affirmed, presenting the day's newspaper. "It's been officially announced." "What?" Mr. Weasley exclaimed, snatching the newspaper. He scanned the articles, oblivious to the bacon still in his mouth. The paper detailed the new reforms in the wizarding world, led by John Wick, and announced a broadcast about the decisive battle with Dumbledore. "Merlin's beard," Mr. Weasley murmured in astonishment. "Praise be to our king!" George exclaimed, throwing his hands in the air. The defeat of Dumbledore marked the rise of a new king and the beginning of significant changes. The ministries of magic were to be unified under a new system, a revelation that initially caused unrest among the wizarding community. However, the mood shifted positively when it was revealed that John Wick was leading the reforms. The werewolf community, thriving under John Wick's benevolence, served as a shining example of what was possible. Previously marginalized, werewolves had found respect and care thanks to Wick. Now, with the entire wizarding world under his leadership, there was a palpable sense of excitement and anticipation. Resistance seemed futile. Who would oppose the chance to be part of this new era under the king's guidance? The news spread like wildfire, transforming apprehension into eager anticipation. The wizarding world was ready to embrace the changes, confident in the leadership of their new king, John Wick. On the streets, wizards in procession carried banners bearing John's emblem, chanting praises in a celebratory manner. This sight left the Minister of Magic, who had feared public resistance, speechless. Charles Rowland experienced mixed emotions. On one hand, he was proud to have aligned himself with the right person. On the other, he watched his son replace the Ministry of Magic's flag with a new one amid the crowd's cheers, which made him question if the ministry had been overtaken. Despite the potential uncertainty about the future of his position, Charles couldn't help but feel a sense of amusement and even daydreamed about his potential rise in rank. Wizards worldwide rejoiced at the establishment of the Magic Kingdom, a stark contrast to their usual detachment from the Ministry of Magic. The ministry's approach to education, which often involved threats of imprisonment for the use of black magic, hardly fostered a sense of belonging among the wizarding community. Many viewed the ministry as nothing more than an institution for apprehension, unaware of its other functions. At Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, Percy watched with a headache as Fred kicked off the Praise My King event. Fred announced that anyone who praised the king would receive a protective banner and a chance to enter a draw. George joined in with exaggerated enthusiasm, prompting laughter and further participation. Percy was exasperated by the twins' antics, which had caused a blockage on the entire street, with praises for John adorning every corner. The lively atmosphere was characteristic of Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, where the twins even considered keeping Ginny on after graduation due to her sales prowess. Percy, concerned about the influence on John, decided to take action. Inside a jewelry shop, Percy awkwardly inquired about a ring for a proposal, a request that reminded the middle-aged, balding shop owner of his own youth. Suddenly, Neville appeared with a similar request, leading to a humorous exchange that highlighted the shop owner's déjà vu moment. This encounter underscored the universal experience of young love and the timeless tradition of proposals, even within the magical community. Today, Cedric scored 3 times. Observing his 2 friends in the store, he remained silent, harboring a hope that the trio wouldn't clash when the time came to propose. "Boss!" The tone was arrogant, as if the boss owed him money. "Scored 4 times, Malfoy announced as he entered and noticed the 3 individuals. "A ring, right?" The boss, accustomed to such interactions, maintained a calm demeanor. "A ring? Are you unwell? I'm inquiring about a custom-made luxurious belt to flaunt my wealth." Malfoy's words implied he doubted the boss's intelligence. The boss responded, "Wait here for me. I'll go to the kitchen and get you some money." The scene unfolded with a mix of anticipation and misunderstanding, highlighting the diverse desires and peculiarities of each character in a humorous light. Chapter 766, Above the Limit, Level 8. In the end, the boss didn't take the money out of the kitchen either. After all, he was a significant client. Successfully selling 3 rings and a dazzling gold belt, John sent his blessings to the 3 individuals planning to marry early and hoped the one who bought the belt wouldn't find it slipping off. How did John know about these transactions? Because this store was affiliated with the Silver Hand. "We're all getting ready," John thought to himself, as he returned to Silverhand Manor after a fruitful battle with Dumbledore. Compared to Grindelwald, he expected Dumbledore to offer him more substantial rewards. He had already encountered the gray bottleneck that seemed insurmountable. 2 black and silver books floated in the air, turning as John absorbed the flashing knowledge into his brain, contemplating a kind of extreme power. Dumbledore's wand had provided him with an answer. Level 7 magic could easily destroy a wand, but curiously, Dumbledore's wand remained unscathed. Instead, it adhered to the end, a result of instilling belief and extreme emotional force. John realized he had always possessed very little emotional strength, rarely using it except in silence. Yet, for wizards, every emotion could manifest miracles. Dumbledore embodied love, a force he deemed great, powerful enough to surpass death, halt the Dark Lord's killing curse, and save young Harry. Dumbledore's love, infused in his magic, allowed his wand to unleash power rivaling that of the Elder Wand. Love was a wonderful, magical, and mystical energy. But for John, love was a complex concept. He pondered over his past experiences with love, feeling helpless. Could he truly experience love on his own? He thought of his friends and recalled a kiss on the forehead from Fleur, feeling warmth but no love. It was akin to a sisterly kiss from childhood. Replacing Fleur with Daphne in his thoughts, John was immediately reminded of Malfoy hanging upside down, a testament to Malfoy's irritating nature even in his imagination. John sighed, acknowledging Daphne's reasons for sanctioning Malfoy. To harness the power beyond the limit, he needed to invoke his emotions. This realization led him to the Department of Mysteries, a place of rebirth for him. Returning to the rotunda with its revolving door leading to nowhere, John stopped before a door imbued with a mysterious power, one that even he couldn't understand or analyze. Dumbledore had once described it as more amazing and more terrible than death, human wisdom, and natural power, love. With scales appearing on his arm and the dragon's power at his fingertips, John unlocked the door. As it slowly opened, he anticipated encountering a power as grand as his battle with Dumbledore, beyond the wizard's power. Stepping into the room, the door closed behind him, and John was left to ponder. Is this love? John surveyed his surroundings and decided against drawing his wand. Before him was a simple mirror, with a chair positioned in front of it. He approached and peered into the mirror, finding it empty. His own reflection was absent. Returning to the chair, he sat down and gazed into the mirror once more. Gradually, a figure began to materialize. Initially, a hand rested on a shoulder, followed by the gradual appearance of an arm, and then a man came into view, Watson Wick. Beside him, Mrs. Wick appeared, followed by John's uncles, and then more relatives. The mirror became crowded with so many faces that it seemed impossible to contain them all. Is this mirror similar to the mirror of Erised? John pondered. You should focus on the essence, not just the surface, a voice from the mirror advised. John watched as a man made his way through the throng to the forefront of the mirror. Clutching an oak staff and sporting a beard reminiscent of Dumbledore's, the man smiled. "Didn't you realize you're already surrounded by love?" "Who are you?" John inquired. The old man in the mirror paused before responding. "Just an old man. Young people usually avoid the elderly, find them too tedious." "Merlin?" John guessed tentatively. The old man chuckled. "You already know, so why ask? I just didn't expect to find you in the mirror," John admitted, shaking his head. "But you're not real." "What is real?" Merlin countered with a smile. "Is it John Wick? Albus Dumbledore? Watson Wick? Ariana Dumbledore Wick?" After posing these questions, he shook his head and pointed to John's heart. "This is what's real, young man. You're filled with it, yet you complicate things for yourself." Merlin's words made John chuckle. That's one way to put it. He reflected on the concept of reaching beyond perceived limits, realizing that focusing on love wasn't a dead end. Gazing at the multitude of people in the mirror, John mused, "Loving so many people can be quite challenging, but magic is a miracle." He stood up, feeling overwhelmed yet unburdened. Closing his eyes, John felt his magic stir and swell within him, a testament to the emotional turmoil the mirror's occupants had inspired. A crisp sound signaled a breakthrough, and a smile graced his lips. Merlin, still in the mirror, applauded as his figure faded away. Ding! Magic power successfully upgrade, current level 8. Love was powerful, but John realized other emotions were equally significant. Chapter 767, The Magic Kingdom. So this is it. The tension in his body and the nerves that had been tightly wound felt like he was gripping a bottle too firmly. The constant battles and the relentless pursuit of strength had made reaching level 8 an arduous task. Now, fully relaxed, it seemed only natural. Of course, without prior experience and knowledge, what some might call success would be nothing more than a jest. Dumbledore sought love because it was what he lacked. John, however, was driven by ambition. This ambition, hidden deep within his heart, was recognized by Dumbledore. He had passed all his trials and dreams, and now the realm beyond limits was unlocked for him. In the philosophy of Eastern countries, when one's thoughts are clear, the path becomes natural. Without any regrets, everything felt incredibly natural. In Western terms, was it the nature of magic? John couldn't quite put his finger on it as he glanced at the panel. The panel had undergone a transformation. The grayness had vanished, and the magic that had once seemed out of reach was now limitless. Alchemy and runes had advanced directly to level 8. It seems breaking one limit leads to the resolution of other issues, John mused, realizing that advancement beyond level 8 might still be possible. The panel hadn't turned gray, but there was no experience bar either, which puzzled him. Could future upgrades rely on moments of epiphany similar to today's? Dismissing these thoughts, John looked into the mirror. The figures that had previously occupied it were gone, except for Merlin, who was still there, idly picking at his ear. "Why are you still here?" John asked, puzzled. Logically, if he had resolved his regrets and understood love, the mirror should have been empty. Yet, Merlin showed no signs of leaving. He simply smiled at John and said, "Magic is wonderful, isn't it? And fun, too." "Aren't you an illusion?" John speculated, eyeing the mirror with suspicion. If Merlin was real, it would be a significant discovery. Merlin, the legendary god of magic, had appeared to him before as Ambrosius of Dragonfield, a younger version. This Merlin had an aged face, but his eyes sparkled with an innocent curiosity, unlike any depiction of Merlin John had known. "What is real and what is not?" Merlin chuckled. "I never claimed to be either," John ventured. "So you exist within the mirror?" "I am him, and yet I am not," Merlin replied with a grin. "We are all Merlin in a way. He can be any of us, yet we are distinct." John was intrigued. It seemed Merlin might manifest in various forms as he had suspected. Turning the conversation, John asked, "Do you know Alexis? A pale, mad wizard?" Merlin pondered. "Doesn't ring a bell." It appeared the memories of these manifestations of Merlin were not consistent. "I think it's time for you to leave," Merlin yawned. "The love in this room is overwhelming." John could sense the powerful yet intangible presence of love in the room. It was like breathing, palpable yet elusive. As John exited, he saw Merlin waving goodbye through the mirror. "I'll have to return later for further research," he thought. The mirror, with its long history, posed the question, which came first, the room or Merlin? John pondered. realizing there was much more to uncover in this magical world. The trace of Gryffindor's adventurous spirit within him was eager for the challenge, but that was a thought for another time. For now. Ding! Challenge mission triggered. Create a magic kingdom. Mission reward, Magic Bloods 1, any 0.5, Blessing, Witch King. This was undoubtedly the most generous reward John could receive. With the promise of magic blood, points, and blessings, his heart stirred. This challenge was exactly what he was meant to do. An interesting challenge, John thought, a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Witch King, a title that sounded far more appealing than any other. The wizarding world was in need of a... The Witch King emerged from the Department of Mysteries, the dark corridor behind him serving as a bridge to his ascension. He entered the elevator behind the Golden Gate, beginning his slow rise to the chamber of the International Federation of Wizards within the Ministry of Magic. Representatives from various nations had gathered, eagerly awaiting the arrival of the esteemed wizard to deliver his announcement. Rita Skeeter, who had not conducted an interview in quite some time, took a moment to steady her excitement, holding the latest video camera developed by the Alchemy Department. Gilderoy Lockhart, preoccupied with his reflection in a gold-rimmed mirror, admired what he considered the most handsome face among all wizards. Percy Weasley, glancing at his pocket watch, had Penelope Clearwater by his side, serving as the recorder, a role he had secured for her, blending professional duty with a personal favor, allowing his girlfriend to witness this historic moment. As the elevator door slid open, revealing the chamber's brown walls and yellow carpet, John stepped out into the expectant silence, aware of the presence awaiting him. At the corridor's end stood Heinrich, adorned in a lavish wizard robe, its weight demanding an upright posture. The robe was embellished with a prominent star emblem, gold, and gemstone patterns adorning the shoulders. "King's masterpiece?" John inquired with a hint of amusement. "He believes only the most splendid attire is fitting," Heinrich responded, his voice deep. "Indeed, it seems appropriate," John remarked, lightly patting Heinrich's shoulder as they proceeded together, their entrance drawing all eyes. Edgar's presence, once a subject of derision, now commanded respect as the king's deputy. Those who had once scorned him now viewed him with sympathy. Heinrich, positioned behind John to the left, mirrored his movements closely, a steadfast supporter in the light of John's leadership. "Ready, Rita?" John called out, prompting Rita to steady her trembling hands, her glasses slipping down her nose in her excitement. "Let's begin," he declared, signaling the start of the broadcast. Rita, with wand in one hand and the camera in the other, initiated the transmission. The signal was relayed to the Alchemy Department's large orb, which then broadcasted to every magical television worldwide. Such broadcasts were rare, usually heralding significant news. At the Weasley household, Mrs. Weasley abandoned her chores, drawn to the television by the unfolding event. Sirius, initially tuned into a sports channel, eagerly called for Lupin to join him. Lupin and Tonks arrived with their baby, Edward Remus Lupin, their first child, to witness the announcement. In Diagon Alley, the crowd paused, their attention captured by the large TV outside Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, which had ceased its usual advertising. A sense of apprehension filled the air, with many fearing the return of dark times. Inside the store, George and a girl held hands tightly, their eyes fixed on the screen. Fred offered reassurance to Angelina, his arm around her shoulders, whispering words of hope. The wizarding world held its breath, awaiting the news from the gathering of influential figures. John, ensuring the broadcast was live, addressed the audience with a clear and determined voice. "We've been through much this year," he began, his expression serene, yet his eyes resolute. "The grave crises we've faced have only brought us closer together, highlighting the weaknesses in our current system. Our fragmented communities hinder our ability to unite as swiftly as the Muggles. It's time for change," he continued. "We, as wizards, are intrinsically linked to our world. We must embrace our unity and address our differences. Despite our varied skin colors and countries of origin, we share a singular identity as wizards. We are bound together as brothers and sisters by the magic coursing through our veins. This marks the dawn of a new era, one that necessitates our unity more than ever before." In the scene, the tension was palpable. The breaths of the influential figures present grew more labored. Fred couldn't help notice the French Minister for Magic, whose hands trembled uncontrollably. John paused for a moment to let his words sink in before he proceeded. The International Federation of Wizards has reached a unanimous decision. Every Ministry of Magic across the wizarding world has voted in favor. He then made a historic announcement. As the President of the International Federation of Wizards, I, John Wick, hereby proclaim the establishment of the Kingdom of Magic. Henceforth, the world's wizarding enclaves will converge in the City of Wizards, a place where all wizards can live equitably. With that declaration, the Kingdom of Magic was officially founded. Chapter 768, The Non-Stop Malice from Muggles. Ding, the task is completed. You have received Magic Blood +1, any point 5, Blessing Witch King. The Witch King, the highest glory of a wizard, sitting on the throne, spreading the kindness and blessings of the Witch King. Mission completed. A smile curled on John's lips as the news of the founding of the wizarding world spread. Wizards worldwide were ecstatic. Despite his preparations, Fred found himself holding his breath when the king announced the news. "Fred! Breathe, Fred!" Angelina, noticing her husband's astonishment, hurriedly reminded him. Fred took a deep breath and exchanged smiles with George. Under the king's glory, the world continued to move forward. The wizarding community would soon become loyal followers of John Wick. The City of Wizards, a utopian place existing nowhere and everywhere, was a sanctuary where wizards need not fear being seen by muggles while practicing magic or worry about colliding with planes during Quidditch matches. Entry was exclusive to wizards. Those wishing to remain connected to their homelands could settle in other countries after obtaining a visa from the City of Wizards. The migration of wizards was scheduled for October, marking the official emergence of the Wizard Nation. In America, the minister feigned sorrow while listening to eulogies for their fallen soldiers. Wearing sunglasses and surrounded by bodyguards, he appeared to mourn. But his thoughts were elsewhere, fantasizing about spending the night with supermodels and lamenting his rivalry with a playboy featured on the cover of Time magazine. "Minister," whispered an aide beside him. The minister, momentarily distracted from his daydreams, flashed a cold look in his eyes. After the service, he made his way to one of his hidden properties, where wealth was a testament to a politician's status. Inside, he found the British gentleman, Mycroft, admiring a small whale in a massive fish tank, blamed for the fleet's demise. "Wow, look who it is!" the minister exclaimed, feigning delight. "The famous Mycroft, whose brilliant mind can unravel the past week's events in seconds." He approached Mycroft, boasting about his attire, and asked, "What do you see?" "You attended a funeral," Mycroft replied, barely glancing at him. "Exactly," the minister clapped, eager for more insights. "Yesterday's companion was quite spirited. There's a bite mark on your neck," Mycroft observed, pulling at the minister's collar, revealing a wealthy family's mark, devoid of crooked teeth or braces, likely belonging to a student with Spanish heritage. The minister, though impressed, appeared slightly annoyed. Mycroft, after inspecting the collar, casually wiped his hands as if he had touched something filthy. "I'm not here for games, Francis," Mycroft stated, his demeanor indicating he had more pressing matters. "I thought you came for golf," the minister replied, feigning ignorance. Mycroft, unfazed, informed him, "Those people are not dead." "Which people?" the minister continued his pretense. "A group capable of tricks," Mycroft hinted, urging the minister to investigate further. "You're too confident," the minister remarked, looking at the whale. "It's a fine whale, but it belongs in the sea," Mycroft commented, preparing to leave. "I'm off to play golf," he said, smiling slightly as he walked past the minister, unconcerned about his high status. "Mycroft, how do you know?" the minister called out, stopping him in his tracks. He stared at Mycroft. "It's not your style to meddle in other people's business." "When someone unleashes a weapon of mass destruction in the Atlantic Ocean under the guise of a drill, I believe I should be informed," Mycroft replied, tilting his head slightly to catch the light, half his face still shrouded in shadows. "Don't delude yourself into thinking you're flawless. You're merely indulging in your own ego." "I'm not interfering for my own sake. I'm doing this for the country," Mycroft clarified, pausing at the door to add, "Also, has anyone ever mentioned your lack of acting skills?" The minister's face darkened as Mycroft left. Frustrated, he grabbed his phone and dialed a number. "Find them! Where are those damn sewer rats hiding?" he growled before hanging up. Alone, he sat brooding in front of the fish tank, contemplating the wizard's survival. The thought of their ability to appear and disappear at will crossed his mind. No, he couldn't let them be. The magical energies they possessed. If they were still alive, it meant the energy remained. The mere thought made him narrow his eyes dangerously. If he could harness that energy, it would be a significant asset, allowing him to secure a position of power in the United States and globally. Despite not understanding how the wizards survived a nuclear bomb, the minister decided it didn't matter. Viewing the wizards as subjects for experimentation, he rationalized his intentions. After all, hadn't previous experiments created heroes? In his mind, the pursuit of power justified his actions. Mycroft enjoyed a round of golf at a course in Washington, executing a perfect swing. "Pretty standard posture," commented the man beside him, clapping. "Really?" Mycroft asked, setting down his club. "How does it compare to John Watson?" "In that case, you're certainly more precise, Mr. Mycroft," the man replied, clearly understanding the importance of flattering someone of Mycroft's stature. Mycroft turned to the man. "A batch of the ammunition you smuggled passed through his cargo lane, Olaf." Yuri Orlov, known as the Lord of War, with a long face and slicked back hair, smiled upon hearing this. "Though it sounds ominous, Mr. Mycroft, you're aware that such businesses operate with certain approvals." Mycroft, unimpressed, posed a hypothetical question about the demise of Yuri's backer, causing Yuri's smile to falter. After a moment of silence, Yuri, realizing Mycroft was serious, asked, "What do you want me to do?" "Continue with your business," Mycroft said, smiling faintly. "On one condition, your operations must receive approval from the hotel." Yuri, taken aback, questioned Mycroft's seriousness. The proposition seemed absurd, yet the implications were clear. After a moment of contemplation, Yuri realized he had little choice. Without his backer, he would be vulnerable. Mycroft's proposal, albeit unusual, offered a new avenue for survival in a dangerous game. The true power broker in the world isn't these minor players, but rather a major nation, akin to a beacon of light. Mycroft only engages in smaller ventures, and without someone to oversee them, these ventures risk being usurped by a new leader. To sustain his operations, he must innovate. After some hesitation, Yuri agreed to his terms. Mycroft didn't leave a business card when he stood to depart. He planned to fly back that very day. Given his high-profile status, comparable to that of a prime minister, he had ventured out under the guise of a vacation. This excursion had cost him an afternoon of rest, and he was eager to return before risking any unwanted media attention. And with that, my favor is repaid, Mycroft thought, aware that the representative from the wizarding world likely appreciated his gesture. The memory of their battle lingered vividly in his mind. The level of combat, far surpassing the capabilities of ordinary fighters, underscored the need for a more formidable force. A subtle light glimmered in Mycroft's eyes as he pondered the future. In his mind, a strategy involving wizards began to take shape, anticipating scenarios that would demand even more from those with magical abilities. Chapter 69, The Alien Wizards Must Die, and the Wizard Disappears in America. The wizard, feeling nervous, sought refuge behind a trash can in a dimly lit alley. The dampness and foul odor were far from comfortable, but he had no other choice. For reasons unknown, the streets were eerily deserted that night. With trembling hands, he took out his wand and cast the disillusionment charm. Unfortunately, his mastery of the charm was subpar, rendering his concealment imperfect. All he could do was pray he remained undiscovered. Regret filled him for not taking his apparition lessons seriously back in school. He held his breath, the only light provided by the dim, flickering glow of old street lamps. Suddenly, a clicking sound broke the silence. Footsteps echoed, heavily splashing through puddles, the sound of rubber soles against the wet ground growing louder. The wizard's breath hitched, his hand covering his mouth. He dared not look up, focusing instead on a rain-soaked pizza box under the trash can, hoping the footsteps would pass quickly. The sound of footsteps approached, seemingly right beside him. He pressed his hand tighter over his mouth, his gaze fixed on the ground. He felt as though eyes were scanning the area, his body tensed, hoping he wouldn't be discovered. Luckily, the footsteps eventually moved on, the sound of rubber soles scraping against the ground as they turned away. The wizard let out a sigh of relief, feeling his tense body relax slightly. He shifted his right foot, trying to restore circulation, not noticing the blood oozing from a bruise on his calf. The scent of blood, imperceptible to most, mingled with the stench from the trash can. Suddenly, the footsteps halted. Lightning illuminated the sky, followed by the flickering of the old street lamps, struggling against the ravages of time before succumbing to darkness. The wizard, hearing no further movement, whispered, "Lumos." A comforting beam of light emanated from his wand. Just as he was about to smile, two electrified javelins, connected by wires, shot out from the darkness, striking him. The electric shock rendered him defenseless, his wand slipping from his grasp as he lost consciousness and was captured. Mycroft pondered the nature of wizards. Are they truly alien, or do they belong to the same cultural fabric as humans? Wizards, a diverse group, hail from various parts of the world, including America, Britain, and the East. They share magical abilities, setting them apart from ordinary humans. Having witnessed a duel between two powerful wizards, Mycroft understood not all possessed such formidable power. Yet, to other wizards, these distinctions mattered little. Presenting his assessment to the Prime Minister, Mycroft argued against classifying wizards as high-level threats. "Wizards are not aliens, they are born among us," he explained. The Prime Minister, seeking clarification, listened as Mycroft elaborated on the impossibility of eradicating wizards without targeting humanity itself. Wizards, emerging from within human society, would always reappear, even if some were eliminated. Mycroft warned that the emergence of unguided, powerful wizards could pose a greater danger than the established wizarding order. Mycroft approached the table, asserting, "Creating chaos is far more dangerous. It's preferable for wizards to have control over those individuals." "What did you witness there?" the Prime Minister inquired with a stern tone. "I'm aware you commandeered a private cruise ship. Despite it being privately owned, your actions raise concerns about whether you're being manipulated." Mycroft, transparent about his actions to the highest authority, responded to the Prime Minister's skepticism with a shake of his head. "I am not being controlled. On the contrary, I am fully aware. The power of wizards is vast, and their capabilities defy simple categorization. What I foresee is the future prosperity of our nation." His eyes sparkled with conviction. "We have the opportunity to be the first country to establish diplomatic relations with their world, bringing benefits that could secure our safety." "Safety?" the Prime Minister replied, his smile tinged with skepticism. "The greatest threat often comes from our adversaries across the table." Mycroft countered, "Have we forgotten the achievements of the United States during World War II? We contributed as well, yet they claimed all the glory and the title of defeating the Nazis. It was then that the disparity between our countries began to widen." The Prime Minister, visibly displeased by the reminder, stated firmly, "You must ensure your promises are fulfilled." "I assure you," Mycroft responded with equal firmness, "wizards will become our allies. We have a plan." The Prime Minister, deep in thought, questioned, "So we just abandon our current stance?" "No," Mycroft replied, glancing at the Queen's photograph. "We continue. True cooperation requires equality. Without it, we are vulnerable to being overpowered." "I need competent individuals and sufficient power," Mycroft declared. "I will provide all that I can during my tenure," the Prime Minister assured, nodding in agreement. The narrative then shifts to highlight the importance of ordinary people in a world where outliers exist. It emphasizes the need for equality and mutual respect between nations and their people, regardless of their abilities or origins. The disappearance of several wizards in the United States catches the attention of John, the newly appointed king, presenting him with a new challenge. Tong Mi, delivering the news, reveals that wizards of various ages living among non-magical communities have vanished without a trace. John, contemplating the situation, decides it's time to act, hinting at a plan to expose another vulnerability within the country. He seeks out Rita Skeeter for assistance, contemplating the necessity of a villain in the narrative of justice and retaliation. This chapter delves into themes of power, diplomacy, and the delicate balance between control and cooperation. It sets the stage for a complex interplay of politics, both within the magical community and between nations, underscoring the ongoing struggle for equality and mutual respect. As the establishment of the Wizarding Nation was on the horizon, John aimed to demonstrate to his allies the significance of justice through a new display of power. In a world devoid of absolute authority, even a beacon of hope must consider external criticism. Moreover, John possessed evidence proving their innocence against baseless accusations. While the plight of the weak might not be appealing, it warranted empathy. Enter Rita Skeeter. "Please tell me, King," Rita said with respect, a stark contrast to her previous reputation as a journalist who twisted facts in newspapers and magazines. John offered a slight smile. "Is the video still ready?" "Always," Rita responded, producing 2 video cassette recorders, VCRs. One contained footage from the Wizarding world, while the other held recordings from the Muggle world. John glanced at the Muggle VCR, chuckled, and remarked, "This time, it's our turn to stand firm." Chapter 770, Penello's Ascension. Penello is currently the most likely candidate in the Ministry of Magic to achieve a significant promotion. Her potential position could rival even that of the Minister of Magic. Initially, her role, primarily focused on external communications, was considered minor. However, with the establishment of the Magic Kingdom, it is poised to become a key diplomatic position. This revelation has left many wizards regretting their previous indifference towards the role, never anticipating its eventual importance in decision-making. Penello's prominence is now second only to the Minister of Magic, Percy, even casting a shadow over Ozzy Hurd. "Is this really happening?" Penello, taken aback, questioned John, who had arrived with Percy. John, raising an eyebrow, responded, "Didn't you negotiate with Muggles?" "But that's America," Penello countered, her expression one of concern. Her negotiations had been confined within the UK, and although Mr. Mike had been involved, he was merely a messenger. The prospect of John negotiating directly with foreign diplomats was daunting to Penello, a formidable woman in her own right. She feared the repercussions of a potential conflict with the Muggles, a burden too heavy for her to bear. "Don't worry, it's nothing serious this time," John reassured her. "Just a friendly inquiry to promote communication." Percy, seizing the moment to boost her confidence, added, "You've got this, Penello." His encouragement, albeit peculiar, was motivated by the significance of the meeting to the Magical Kingdom's establishment, solidifying Penello's indispensable role. Despite Percy's odd method of encouragement, John couldn't help but question it silently. "What's the agenda this time?" Percy inquired, as he purchased a drink for John. "A challenging diplomatic mission," John replied, taking a sip. Percy suggested a moment of rest, acknowledging the toll recent events had taken on the wizarding community. The aftermath of the Magic Crystal Island incident had left them weakened, highlighting the scarcity of wizards and their limited combat capabilities. John, with a hint of mystery, assured him, "This time, wizards won't need to fight. The war is over." Percy, placing his trust in John, then broached the subject of nation-building, a concept previously unimagined by most wizards. John emphasized the urgency of establishing a magical country to foster a sense of belonging among wizards and protect them from external threats. "We lack time," John stated, highlighting the need to safeguard their community before the Great Migration. He envisioned a nation strengthened by war, empowered by new education, and independent from the Muggle world through its own laws and diplomacy. Percy, understanding the gravity of the situation, pledged his full support to John's vision, recognizing the importance of Muggle recognition for the magical community's future. Together, they aimed to elevate the status of wizards, ensuring their place in the broader human society and preventing future hostilities. Percy looked up with a serious expression. "I have one condition," he stated. "You need to be present at my wedding." "Of course," John agreed without hesitation. He momentarily forgot that the wedding was being planned by the twins. Given their penchant for mischief, it was bound to be a grand and raucous affair, a fact that seemed to escape the notice of the so-called king of the wizarding world. John had always maintained that he stood on the side of justice. He believed that true justice often emerged from oppression, necessitating resistance. This belief was put to the test when an owl made an unexpected entrance into the U.S. Embassy in the UK, located at Building 24 on the west side of Grosvenor Square. The sight of a white owl boldly staring down an officer who recoiled in fear was both amusing and bewildering. Basil, the owl, seemed to wonder why the humans were so slow to react. "Didn't this two-legged beast see me deliver the letter? Hurry up and pick it up," he got impatiently. The officer, on the other hand, was utterly confused. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, eyeing the two unconscious men on the ground with a mix of fear and disbelief. Could this be a new form of terrorist attack? An owl? Unbeknownst to him, Basil had simply dealt with those who had foolishly tried to impede his mission, albeit non-lethally. "What are you? They're bleeding. You killed them," the officer exclaimed, mistakenly believing he was conversing with the owl. Growing impatient, Basil decided to take matters into his own talons. He hopped onto the table, causing the officer to step back in alarm. This dance of advance and retreat continued until the officer found himself cornered. Just as he was about to attempt a futile capture, Basil deftly threw the letter at the officer's face and strutted away with an air of indignation. "Sending a letter?" the officer mumbled to himself, utterly bewildered. He examined the envelope, noting it was addressed to the president. "This must be a dream," he thought. "First, an owl incapacitates two men, and now I'm supposed to deliver its letter to the president? Perhaps it's a plea for owl legal immigration rights. This has to be a hallucination." Meanwhile, the president reviewed the letter with a stern expression. It detailed an unprovoked attack on the wizarding world by the United States. Without uttering a word, he shifted his gaze forward, reflecting on the increased frequency of his meetings with the minister compared to the past 3 years. "I need an explanation," the president demanded, setting the letter aside. The insinuation that the attack was merely an exercise and the subsequent pursuit of survivors did not sit well with him. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he contemplated the potential impact on his re-election campaign. The minister, taken aback by the audacity of the wizards to directly send a letter to the embassy, took a deep breath. "I'll take care of it," he assured, though his disdain for the president's preoccupation with re-election was evident. "Everything will return to calm," the minister promised, though his words lacked conviction. The wizard sought negotiations, and he was determined to oblige. However, his insincerity was as clear as day, casting doubt on the possibility of a peaceful resolution. Chapter 771. The jungle is cleared, and the hunter approaches negotiate. How can there be negotiation between those who are not equals? Your letter, Mr. Wick. It was rare to receive a letter not sent by Owl. John gestured for the messenger to leave. As he picked up the letter, he found himself touching his forehead in amusement. "It's been ages since I last wrote with a pen." The messy handwriting on the letter made it clear to John how frustrated the sender must have been, forced to resort to writing due to the inability to contact him by phone. Scanning the letter, a smile played on his lips. It's time for a business trip. He was eager to see the pride of the hunter who roamed with a shotgun. "Get my luggage ready," John commanded, and his surroundings began to organize themselves. He didn't need much for himself, but he had to maintain the appearance of vulnerability. To truly deceive the enemy, one must be underestimated at heart. As the oversized suitcase opened, magic crystals leaped into it, packing themselves neatly. Pinello knocked on John's office door. With John having secured the location of the Magic Kingdom, the Ministry of Magic was now effectively under his command. Pinello and her husband Percy were accustomed to delivering reports with stoic expressions, even in the office. "Your Excellency Wick, the Great Migration is underway," Pinello began. The Silverhand Fashion Building, Silverhand Alchemy Workshop, and the International Research Institute of Magical Science and Technology have started relocating various wizard communities. Additionally, the newly established Wizard Information Registration Office has begun tallying the number of wizards. Thanks to the comprehensive information provided by Johnny Silverhand, we expect to complete the census within a fortnight, she continued, her report detailed and precise. The more Pinello executed John's directives, the more she marveled at his foresight. The collection of wizard information had begun long before, easing the burden on the ministries of magic worldwide. Griffhook, the director of Gringotts Mint, has sent a letter, Penelo mentioned, pulling out the parchment and handing it over. She couldn't help but add, some goblins are beginning to demand equality. Equality. The goblins had sought decision-making roles within the Ministry of Magic multiple times in the past, only to be rebuffed, even during Fudge's inept administration. This refusal had led to goblins undermining the ministry's decisions on several occasions. John unfolded the letter, his eyebrows raising. Equality, he mused. They seem to forget who allowed them the space to live. He scoffed at the audacity of a race that had once rebelled, now clamoring for equality. Werewolves had been granted equality because they were wizards who sought to change their past. Goblins, with their distinct culture and history of opposition to wizards, still yearned for equality. John had already been generous in not enslaving them. After reading Grifhook's letter, John acknowledged the goblins' pragmatism. The list of goblins is a testament to your loyalty, he noted. Grifhook had provided a list of all goblins, including several elders not recorded by the Ministry of Magic. These were individuals to be monitored, possibly survivors of past rebellions. Prepare a document to officially appoint Grifhook as the director of the Gringotts Mint, John instructed Penelo. Understood, she replied, ready to leave. Penelo, John called after her. Get ready. We're leaving too. Leaving? To America. Penelo nodded once more, her eyes betraying her fatigue. In preparing for the negotiations with the United States, she had done extensive research. As a person of mixed heritage, she had access to a wealth of information about the country. Only through understanding could she grasp the true strength of their position. John was well aware of the mental state of the person he was negotiating with this time. He could see that she was out of her depth, but it didn't concern him much. Icily, it was a negotiation, but his real objective was to inflict pain on the hunter. The outcome of the negotiations was irrelevant. He had brought enough leverage to entice greed. However, Penelo was unaware of this, believing that John intended to negotiate with Muggles to secure living space for the wizarding world. It could be said that Percy had a keen eye. This girl was perfectly suited for her role. No one would dislike a diplomat who could empathize and solve problems for wizards. Unfortunately, we seek not only peace through diplomacy, but also through force, John said with a slight smile, his right hand adorned with a silver ring featuring a mesmerizingly bright gemstone. At level 8, you should now be ready to confront those people. Following his duel with Dumbledore, John emerged as the undisputed strongest wizard, bolstering his confidence to challenge the most powerful Muggle nation. Despite their strength, Muggles had a vulnerability: life. The silver morphed back into the ring, now replaced by black scales. John's eyes transformed into vertical pupils as he spoke in an ancient, obscure language. I hope your arrogance is sufficient for me to stand on the side of justice without guilt and impose sanctions on you. At an American airport, Penelo walked out in a daze, puzzled by the necessity of flying by plane when faster methods like a portkey existed. Traveling alone made her feel awkward, accustomed as she was to the flu network and broomsticks. Yet, she had to admit that airplanes offered more comfort than wizarding modes of transport. Let's go, John's voice came from her left, startling Penelo. Lord Wick? She looked around. Where did you come from? It's not important, John replied curtly, snapping his fingers. A taxi pulled up in front of them. Get in. The driver, inexplicably compelled, was eager to transport the two passengers. They arrived at the political center of the United States, where the guards at the entrance ignored them. John led Penelo inside. As they entered a conference room, a man with a Mediterranean haircut and a look of surprise asked, "Who are you?" "Hello, we're here to discuss the Atlantic exercise with your country," John replied with a smile. "Ah?" The man seemed uncertain. "I need to check." "Please do," John said, showing no intention of leaving. He glanced at the two American flags, waved his hand, and one transformed into the flag of the Magic Kingdom. Penelo hesitated. "Is this really okay?" She felt her boss was disregarding the rules, walking in unannounced. This approach was starkly different from her previous negotiations in the UK. Were the people here more amenable? "Of course, we did make an appointment. After all," John reassured her. If he knew what Penelo was thinking, he would have laughed. Being amenable had nothing to do with it. The people here were more brutal and rude than primitives. Their unnoticed entry was due to John's use of spiritual magic to make them invisible to others. The Mediterranean man informed Minister Francis of the situation. The minister, frowning and angry, exclaimed, "What are you doing with a bunch of fools?" The two had slipped in undetected. He had not intended to negotiate, but to lure them in, capture them, and extract information about the magic crystal mine and survival tactics. However, their unauthorized entry disrupted his plan. To prevent their escape, the minister decided to meet with the wizards. For a moment, he mused, "Mike, that fool, has often remarked on the oddity of those wizards. I'm curious to see what could possibly be stranger than bullets." With a sneer, he prepared to confront the wizard, confident that the negotiation would conclude in his favor. He was certain of it. Accompanied by his entourage, he made his way to the meeting room. Originally, a discussion was scheduled to take place there, but the minister had rearranged it to another location. As he entered, it felt like two hunters encountering each other in the forest. The hunter, advancing slowly through the underbrush, revealed a face marked by greed and cruelty. The American, with a smirk on his face, displayed his deceitful nature, a testament to how often he had misled his own people. "Wizard," the minister entered, casting a sharp glance at the duo. The sight before him was almost laughable, a shabbily assembled team of just two people, a woman and a young man who appeared to still be in school. It was well known that the country's diplomatic team never traveled in large numbers, but the presence of these two was particularly amusing. Observing them, John greeted, "Hello, we are representatives from the Magic Kingdom, and we wish to discuss Magic Crystal Island with your country." "Oh," the minister sat down nonchalantly. "Are you here to offer an apology?" Despite being the aggressor, he expected an apology, adopting a superior tone. Pinello responded with a serious demeanor. "Your country attacked our island unprovoked, injuring many wizards. We seek a resolution." "A resolution? Of course there is one," the minister replied, eyeing Pinello with a predatory gaze. He hadn't yet had the pleasure of playing with a witch. The usual cover models had become somewhat dull, and this witch seemed appealing. His objectifying gaze made Pinello extremely uncomfortable. Chapter 772, Against the Wizard Mobile Force. The minister didn't even bother to attend the meeting in person, which clearly showed his dismissive attitude. He casually asked, "What's your name?" without glancing at John, focusing instead on Pinello, a witch dressed in Muggle workplace attire. Pinello replied with a stern face, "Diplomat of the Magic Kingdom, Pinello Clearwater." "Oh, I remember you," the minister remarked. "Mike mentioned you. Your tricks made him talk about it many times." He blatantly disregarded the significance of magic, referring to it as mere tricks, which deeply offended Pinello. She firmly stated, "Magic is not a trick. It is the ability that wizards rely on for survival." For Pinello, it was crucial to defend the honor of wizards. "Aren't you looking for a solution?" The minister, who had faced criticism from the president over wizard-related issues, approached Pinello and whispered condescendingly, questioning if witches were akin to ordinary girls. John's expression hardened at the minister's words. Pinello, infuriated, imagined casting a spell to mar the minister's face with unsightly acne. However, she restrained herself, recognizing this was not the place for impulsive actions. The minister, misinterpreting her silence, placed his hands on her shoulders and squeezed, suggesting his proposition was reasonable. John intervened. "If you don't remove your hands from Diplomat Clearwater's shoulders," he said with a cold smile, "I'll throw you off the Statue of Liberty." His threat sent a shiver down the minister's spine, prompting him to retract his hands, filled with humiliated rage, but trying to mask it with a forced smile. The minister then attempted to negotiate from a position of power, demanding, "Hand over the magic crystal mine, and we will consider overlooking your offense." John, feigning surprise, reminded him of the war initiated by the minister's country. The minister, however, denied it, claiming it was a wizard attack on their military drills. The standoff continued, with the minister underestimating the capabilities of wizards, comparing their magic unfavorably to bullets. John, unfazed, prepared to reveal the truth. He connected a VCR to a projector and played a video that captured the entire sequence of events leading to the battle, including the moment a warship ignored warnings and landed on the island, leading to the conflict that resulted in the soldiers' defeat. John, addressing the minister's earlier smugness, remarked, "I read the newspaper a few days ago, and you looked better in the newspaper than in real life." The video served as undeniable evidence, exposing the state's lies about the so-called military exercise that was, in reality, an invasion of another territory. In an effort to destroy the evidence, he personally detonated a nuclear bomb and dispatched many soldiers. What infuriated him was that the primary target, a wizard, survived the explosion. The footage of this event was obscured by a blinding white light, revealing only the wizard's miraculous survival. It seemed these dirty sewer rats had managed to escape by sheer luck. The minister's expression turned grim. The leak of this information could cause an uproar worldwide, especially with anti-war sentiment on the rise. Such a revelation could lead to the downfall of not only his own position, but also that of the president. "This is a ticking time bomb," the minister said, fixing his gaze on John. "The wizard assassinated our president," he stated. John, unfazed, responded, "As we've previously mentioned, there exists a faction of rebellious wizards." With a smile, John added, "And you've apprehended the assassin, haven't you? The actions of these rebels are not my concern." John maintained his composure as he spoke to the senior official of one of the world's most powerful nations. "On the contrary, your country has failed to address the invasion and persecution of certain wizards." "No, it's the persecution of witches in America," he corrected. "The missing wizard is an American citizen. In theory, they should be under state protection. Unfortunately, that's not the case." John observed the minister's face growing increasingly displeased. "I hope your country will release them." The minister's expression was dark as a storm cloud. He glanced at the box John was carrying and inquired, "What's that?" "This." John patted the box casually. "Just some luggage and chips." An insincere smile crossed the minister's face. "Negotiations require a show of good faith, don't they?" "You're right," John agreed, opening the box to reveal it contained only magic crystals. He added nonchalantly, "They can serve as a backup." The minister's eyes widened at the sight of the magic crystals. "Why do you have so many?" John's naive response, "What's so strange about that? I'm well acquainted with these things," pleased the minister, whose eyes gleamed with greed. He had gleaned from their conversation that the magic crystal mine was not unique and that John knew of other locations. The minister pondered, realizing that securing the magic crystal mine could position him as a global energy leader, bringing immense wealth and power. Such influence could even make the president deferential to him. By controlling this energy source, he could achieve the organization's grand ambitions. At that moment, greed overtook him. "I'm sorry, but I believe my country has made a mistake," the minister said, suddenly appearing sincere. He discreetly pressed a button on his watch and said to John, "However, I'm not well versed in the wizarding matters you mentioned." He aimed to keep the wizards at ease. John, possessing psychic magic, saw through the minister's feigned ignorance and summoned reinforcements. "Is that so?" John said with a smile. "I could send someone to investigate, but unfortunately, I'm unaware of where your wizards are hiding." The minister, now fully immersed in his role, declared, "You're correct. They are American wizards, and we should not abandon them." Caught up in his performance, the minister passionately added, "We must protect them, allowing them to grow in a safe environment, free from disturbance or discovery." John, unable to contain his amusement at the minister's theatrics, burst into laughter. "Sorry, I couldn't hold back," he said, still smiling. He had already ensured the building was empty and activated a super sense spell, allowing him to see the entire structure. Special teams armed with tranquilizer guns were poised outside the room. John waved dismissively at the minister, his smile broadening. "By the way, has anyone ever told you that your acting skills need improvement? Are you really that bad?" John's words, familiar yet charged with disbelief, broke the silence. The facade of sincerity the minister had been maintaining vanished in an instant. His expression darkened, and with a sneer he retorted, "Well, since you disagree with me, let's explore another approach." Rising from his seat, the minister straightened his tie and spoke with evident disdain. "I have little patience for you cowards who skulk in the shadows. Reveal the location of the mining area, or else," he he threatened, leaving the sentence ominously unfinished. Suddenly, doors burst open and walls crumbled as a team stormed in. John and Pinello found themselves targeted by more than a dozen red laser sights. This weapon has been specifically designed after studying the physiology of wizards, the minister declared, his voice oozing confidence. And as for you mobile wizards, we have the means to exterminate all of you vermin. Is that so? John replied, his gaze shifting to the wizard mobile unit. Should I interpret this as a declaration of war against the magical kingdom? His question hung in the air, a challenge to the minister's aggressive stance, hinting at the gravity of the situation and the potential for a conflict that could alter the balance between their worlds. Chapter 703, Witch Hunt. Capturing the Wizard. Some wizards are reluctant to leave their homes, having lived there for a long time. They believe their crisis has passed. However, this stubbornness to stay put is not beneficial. After all, a wizarding city thrives on its population. Centralized management is crucial for effectiveness. Yet, some wizards in the American gathering place resist relocating, unwilling to abandon their homeland. Credence played a pivotal role in the Battle of Magic Crystal Island. Despite being prone to losing control, he managed to overpower Moran with his magic power, thanks to John's magical baptism. However, this victory came at a cost, rendering him unable to use his silent power for a month. During this time, Nagini took care of him. Nagini, here you are, Credence said as he handed her the wand John had given her. Nagini accepted the wand, but did not stow it away. Her magic was weak, having spent years as a snake, her soul fragmented and her body cursed. Without systematic magical training, her recovery was slow. To Nagini, the wand held more sentimental value than power. She caressed its swirls, chuckled, and placed it back in Credence's hand. Together we use this wand, she said, symbolizing their rebirth as wizards. Credence looked at Nagini, feeling surreal. I feel like I'm dreaming, he said. You've said that many times, Nagini replied with a soft smile. Outside the Plymouth colony, an area marked as quarantine due to the presence of explosives, a heavily armed anti-wizard mobile unit appeared. The wizards they sought to capture had exposed this place for refusing Muggle entry. How do we get in? A member of the wizard mobile unit asked. Their magic protected the place from Muggles, rendering conventional equipment ineffective. Someone will come out, replied a man, his arm adorned with a broken wizard's wand armband. Soon after, a wizard hurried out, noticing someone watching him. He attempted to act nonchalant, but was quickly incapacitated by a tranquilizer shot to the neck. The anti-wizard unit dragged him to the entrance, where they deployed a machine with sharp needles that penetrated the wizard's body. The machine activated, causing fluctuations at the entrance, which remained open thanks to the technology, underestimated by many but effective, especially in collaboration with certain wizards. They entered with a clear mission, to capture the rats encroaching on the land. Inside, the wizards were reduced to mere test subjects, marked with chips and numbers. Outside Johnny Silverhand's store, an uproar ensued, followed by an unfamiliar voice. Paul, the salesman, rushed in, alerting, "A bunch of weirdos have come in." "That idiot Johnson is blocking them," he added. The intruders, part of the wizard mobile unit, were on a witch hunt project, intending to plant explosives. Johnson, using his immense strength, wielded a large wooden club against a witch hunter. An armor curse activated behind him, and he turned to see several team members stunned by a suspended anesthesia needle. "You really should change your weapons," Johnson remarked, unfazed by the gunfire. He charged at the troops, tearing open his clothes to reveal a series of amulets. With his club, he struck down the Muggles, invading Johnny Silverhand's store. The security guard emerged as well. Due to the Battle of Magic Crystal Island, their numbers had dwindled. Other wizards in the Plymouth colony had also come under attack. Those who had previously preferred the solitude of the colony now longed for the safety of the wizarding city. Merlin's beard. How did they manage to get in here? Paul, discarding his flamboyant, narrow-waisted suit, peered at the Muggles gathered outside, puzzled by their ability to bypass the Muggle-repelling charm. There must be wizards aiding them, Credence deduced. Otherwise, the Muggles wouldn't have been able to enter. Nagini, you should go first, Credence urged, releasing Nagini's hand. No, Credence, Nagini protested, holding on to his hand tightly. You haven't fully recovered yet. I won't use the power of the Obscurus, Credence assured her. I promise. He was aware of the risks of losing control if he continued to harness the Obscurus's power. Nagini, Credence whispered, pulling her into an embrace and gazing into her eyes. I love you. He left a gentle kiss on her lips before pushing her towards Paul, shouting, Get out of here! I'll find you! Lady Snake, this way, Paul said, guiding Nagini to the fireplace. As the blue flames ignited, enveloping her, Nagini's eyes remained fixed on Credence. Credence, she started, but the flames whisked her away. Credence, with determination, rolled up his sleeves, grabbed his wand adorned with a blue gem, and strode outside. You have violated the laws of the United States. Lay down your arms and stop resisting, blared the horn, filled with noise. A team member, frustrated, exclaimed, Damn it! It started like this as soon as we came in. This is due to a special magnetic field, explained a technician, his eyes gleaming as he admired the iron armor charm amulet, superior to any body armor. These are the innovations that keep our science ahead of the world. During World War II, there were attempts to harness magic for weaponry. If we could weaponize these forces, we could create the world's most elite army, the technician mused. Enough about new weapons. Are you sure they're operational? The team member asked, setting aside the horn and examining the sonic weapon. This device will dazzle you, the technician boasted, activating the switch. An invisible shockwave spread out, causing the wizards to grimace and cover their ears. As expected, their defensive magic can't block sound, the technician observed with satisfaction. As Johnson stumbled and nearly fell from the sonic attack, the technician connected the device to two oversized amplifiers, enhancing the sound waves. The intermittent blasts disrupted the wizard's spellcasting, and an anesthesia dart rendered one unconscious. These individuals must possess some unique genetic mutation. Extracting it could become our secret weapon, the technician speculated, dreaming of Nobel Prize glory. However, his fantasies were shattered when a massive black mass descended from the sky, enveloping the team before the machinery exploded. The black mass then retracted, revealing a panting Credence. Feeling the stir of the Obscurus within, Credence knew he had to act swiftly to protect the Plymouth community. An anesthesia dart was fired at him, but he conjured the iron armor curse in defense. With a swift motion of his ring, he sent a team member flying. You made this? Credence glared at the technician, disappearing and reappearing in front of him, his hand gripping the man's neck, cutting off his air supply. The nearby agents opened fire, but Credence, with a flick of his wand, disarmed them all. An explosion interrupted his next move as planted bombs detonated. Credence waved his wand, parting the flames of the explosion to either side. This power is amazing, the technician exclaimed, his eyes alight with fascination. Credence demonstrated strength beyond anything we've ever witnessed, he exclaimed, using the technician as a human shield to intercept the incoming anesthesia needle. The technician's head lolled to the side as he lost consciousness. Discarded by Credence, the technician slumped to the ground while Credence advanced towards the mobile unit, confronting the wizard. All wizards, leave now, he commanded. Just then, another explosion rocked the area. The Johnny Silver hand store activated a massive iron armor, effectively neutralizing the blast. This time, no wizard dared to resist. The stakes of life and death were too high, and allegiance to their homeland paled in comparison. Chapter 774, Greedy Politicians and Witches. Declaration of War? The minister, confident of his victory, couldn't help but smile upon hearing John's words. Do you believe you're qualified for that? In the presence of strength, the weak may bow, not out of humility, but for survival. However, in this scenario, the minister saw himself and his country as the embodiment of strength. You don't seriously think your fellow wizards can stand against an entire country, do you? He asked, amusement clear in his tone. Why not? John retorted. We have already triumphed once. Penello, glaring at the wizards, was on the verge of drawing her wand, but John held her back. He fixed his gaze on the minister, his voice steady. Your arrogance blinds you to the strength before you. The minister's response was dismissive, likening their claim to a child pretending to be Captain America, a comparison that, in his view, highlighted the absurdity of their threat. Even Captain America, when faced with a gun, cannot escape, he said, unbothered by their previous failure. Had you not targeted the magic crystal initially, do you really think your ridiculous magics could have bested technology? He lamented the missed opportunity to control the mining area and monopolize its energy resources, a plan thwarted by the wizard's tenacious resistance. You fool, he said, pulling out a video recorder with a contemptuous smile. Let me teach you a lesson. Without evidence, there can be no proof. He then proceeded to destroy the recorder and the images it contained, crushing them under his expensive leather shoes. In his world, without evidence, any narrative could be manipulated to maintain power. John watched in silence as the minister turned his attention to a box of power crystals. Extracting a purple crystal, he marveled at its potential, recalling technologies from a previous organization that could harness such mysterious power. The prospect of recreating formidable weapons from these blueprints sparked a new level of greed in his eyes. As the most greedy politician, I see opportunities to profit from war and destruction, he mused, envisioning the sale of obsolete weapons and the orchestration of attacks for financial gain. The magic crystals represented a more lucrative path. A group of ignorant fools, he said, holding the crystal with a sense of reverence. With such treasures at your disposal, you choose to wield mere sticks. We can provide you with these things, John stated firmly. We seek cooperation with countries. Cooperation? The minister laughed mockingly. What makes you think you're in a position to offer that? He boasted about his willingness to exploit and sacrifice others for personal gain, dismissing John's proposal with a sneer. Why should I pay when I can simply eliminate all the wizards and claim these treasures for myself? Penelo, unable to contain her frustration, spoke up. Aren't you worried about others finding out? Who would know? The minister replied, indicating that the members of the wizard mobile unit were wearing sound-blocking headphones. They can't hear a thing, he said, pointing to his watch that controlled the device. He revealed that military technology far surpassed civilian advancements, noting that the wizards present had no recollection of their conversation. He even mentioned a team member's mundane concern about needing to use the restroom, emphasizing the triviality of their worries. I didn't plan to meet with you today, the minister confessed. My intention was to capture all the bothersome, mouse-like wizards. He cut off Penelo before she could speak, his disdain for magic evident. Your magic is nothing but a parlor trick, he sneered. Technology can achieve wonders beyond your imagination. Some wizards who understand the situation have chosen Harzunained. The revelation that there were wizards collaborating with them took Penelo by surprise. From the information we've extracted from those captured wizards, we've pinpointed the locations where wizards congregate, the minister explained. With the assistance of wizards on our side, we can infiltrate these gatherings and eliminate those threats. That's impossible, Penelo objected. All wizarding locations are protected by muggle-repelling charms. I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to, but I can assure you that such measures are ineffective against technology, the minister replied with a dismissive arrogance, completely overlooking the wizard's concerns. He then turned to John, boasting, Your associate has chosen to collaborate with me because he's intelligent. I hope you'll make the wise decision as well. The minister was confident in his proposition, only engaging in this dialogue with John out of concern that without his cooperation, they would be unable to locate the vast magic crystal mines. His lengthy speech was essentially an attempt to persuade John to betray the wizarding world and guide him to those locations. Penelo couldn't help but find the situation absurd, considering the minister's attempt to recruit the king of the magical world as a traitor. Is he seriously contemplating a rebellion from the Witch King? She thought, recognizing the folly in such a notion. The more she pondered, the more Penelo sensed the oddity of the negotiation. It was far from a peace-seeking discussion. John's choice of the ambitious minister as a negotiating partner, the unnecessary display of magic crystals, and the provocative remarks all pointed to a deliberate strategy. Penelo realized that the true intention was to provoke a war. Is this what you desire, my king? Penelo wondered, alarmed by the potential consequences for the already dwindling wizarding population. A war could be catastrophic. John, unfazed, applauded the minister's cunning, yet criticized his treachery. "You're a skilled politician, but also a despicable traitor," he remarked, noting the minister's selfish ambitions. In Plymouth Colony, the situation for the wizards was dire. With their numbers dwindling, the remaining wizards, Credence and Johnson, faced a critical decision. Johnson, with only one amulet left, turned to Credence for help in rescuing the captured wizards. Despite the risks, Credence agreed to attempt a rescue. As they prepared to act, a mysterious figure emerged from within the Silver Hand Johnny store, illuminated by a blue flame. This person, devoid of a wand but armed with a magnificent, luxurious sword, presented a new element of intrigue in the unfolding drama. Chapter 7-5 Juggernaut, Neville Longbottom. "Give up resistance, wizard," the wizard mobile unit shouted. "You are surrounded." "Can you still transform into that black entity?" Johnson, gritting his teeth, extracted the anesthesia needle embedded in his flesh. A dose of anesthetic had seeped into his system. Fortunately, his robust constitution meant that aside from feeling slightly drowsy, he was largely unaffected. "I don't think I can," Credence admitted, looking equally troubled. Before his involvement in the Battle of Magic Crystal Island, handling these muggles wouldn't have posed much of a challenge. However, his current predicament of simultaneously fighting and worrying about Moran's potential rampage complicated matters significantly. "What a dreadful day," Johnson lamented, assessing the heft of the large stick in his grasp. "Perhaps we can escape through the fireplace." "Those wizards are still captive," Credence reminded, his thoughts also on the rescue. The muggles' attack suggested sinister motives behind capturing the wizards. "Well, let's hope we don't end up as captives too." Unable to persuade Credence to flee, Johnson resolved to stay. "I'll draw their attention outside, use the chance to free the others." Johnson was ready to sacrifice his safety for the opportunity. Outside, the muggles continued their relentless assault on the building. "Damn, it still won't budge," the commander muttered under his breath. Despite several attempts with C4 explosives, the building remained sealed. Approaching too closely triggered a repelling force, leaving them at a standstill. "That shapeshifter must be captured. He's a rare research specimen," declared a technician, freshly revived from anesthesia with an injection of epinephrine, eager to secure Credence. This wizard was deemed far more valuable than the others. "What's that noise?" The high-tech headphones they wore, designed to enhance hearing and communication, picked up unusual sounds resembling dog barks. The next moment, the door to Johnny Silverhand's store swung open, unleashing more than a dozen large dogs, each about half the height of a person. "Fire!" the commander ordered without hesitation. However, the bullets proved ineffective against these spectral hounds. After being hit with anesthetics, one of the dogs lunged, dragging a muggle away with its bloodied jaws. "According to our intel, this is a magic supply shop. Switch the ammunition," the commander instructed. The new bullets, designed to be lethal, were not easily repelled. Johnson emerged, clutching a box. With a mighty heave, he launched it into the air. As it opened, wizard chess pieces spilled out, transforming into man-sized stone soldiers upon landing. The muggles were taken by surprise. "Now!" Johnson, armed with a club and an oak shield, charged. The shield glowed, repelling those nearby and clearing a path. Seizing the moment, Credence burst forth in silence, smashing the wizard's cage and enveloping the freed wizards with a protective force. The muggles' gunfire proved futile against Moran, who transformed into a massive sphere, soaring into the sky before plummeting down. Dark tentacles lashed out, hurling the muggles aside. After securing the area, Credence headed towards Johnny Silverhand's store. "He mustn't escape," the commander bellowed, grabbing a bazooka. "Stop!" the researcher protested vehemently. "They're valuable research subjects." But the commander, focused solely on his mission to capture or eliminate the targets, disregarded the plea. With the press of a button, the missile was launched. Silently, Credence arrived with a dozen wizards, completely unprepared for what was to come. Just as the missile was about to make contact, a cold light flashed, and a sword sliced through it effortlessly, like a hot knife through butter. Following this, 19 iron armor curses were activated, containing the explosion. "What is that?" The commander's eyes widened in disbelief. Emerging from the flames, a figure walked out slowly. As Credence reached Joe, nigh Silverhands, he glanced over his shoulder to see a man with impressively strong arms, slowly raising a sword that seemed capable of cutting through anything. Neville Longbottom? Johnson found himself surrounded and couldn't help but exclaim upon recognizing the figure. In the Battle of Magic Crystal Island, the sword-wielding figure had been a standout presence. Neville's exceptional swordsmanship was as remarkable as that of the legendary Knights of the Round Table. After the battle, this Lion of Longbottom earned a new moniker, Juggernaut. His sword was not only capable of storing magic, but also of slicing through it. Neville sprang into action, his movements reminiscent of a lion charging across the savannah. He darted through the flames and breached the Muggle team's defenses without any resistance. With a flick of his blade, the Muggle's menacing iron wand was cleaved in two upon contact. Neville carved his way through, and when a Muggle reacted by firing a shot, the bullet headed straight for Neville's back. In a display of incredible speed, he spun around, sword in hand, and slashed. The bullet split in two, veering off towards two Muggles and taking them down. How did he do that? Isn't he a wizard? The commander was in complete disarray. The prevailing belief was that magic posed the greatest threat to wizards, yet here was someone who defied that notion. Even those clad in body armor were effortlessly sliced open. Neville's sword seemed like a magical weapon in its own right, and his speed only increased, turning him into a veritable whirlwind that passed before anyone could react. Single-handedly, he decimated the entire mobile unit. The commander found the sword's tip mere inches from his throat, while the members of the anti-wizard mobile unit collapsed behind Neville. The researchers were in a state of panic, having never anticipated facing such a formidable adversary. Attempting to maintain his composure, the commander stated, "You are fighting against the government." "And you are fighting against our king," Neville retorted, his voice steady. The once timid student had evolved into one of the wizarding world's most formidable warriors. A slight tilt of his sword rendered the commander speechless. "You killed our people." The commander, a product of elite special forces, locked eyes with Neville. "You can't bear the consequences of these actions." "It's not the first time," Neville replied, his sword lowering slowly until the tip grazed the ground. He surveyed the surroundings. The once thriving Plymouth settlement was now besieged and ablaze. Noticing Neville's diverted attention, the commander covertly glanced at the gun on his waist. Known for his quick draw, he could fire in a fraction of a second. At this range, aiming was unnecessary for a guaranteed hit. He calculated his chances, realizing he had only one opportunity. The commander made his move, his speed so swift that even the onlooking researchers failed to notice his hand reaching for the gun. The trigger was pulled, the bullet propelled by the ignited gunpowder, and flames burst from the barrel. A smile crossed the commander's face, believing he had seized the moment of Neville's carelessness. However, the expected outcome of a wizard, albeit physically superior to a regular human, succumbing to a gunshot, did not materialize. "Thorn." The commander stared in disbelief at his own gun. Neville returned the gaze. 2 seconds later, the gun split in half, along with the bullet, rendering the commander's attempt futile. A bullet flew out, stopping less than a centimeter away, alongside the commander's finger. Neville maintained his stance, sword raised, as a single drop of red blood struggled to slide off the tip, hitting the ground just before the commander collapsed. The researchers were utterly dumbfounded. Without any means of defense, they were left pondering their imminent demise, unable to entertain any other thoughts. Neville cast a brief glance at them before turning to leave slowly. Johnson, leaning on a wooden stick, gave Neville a thumbs up. "A very beautiful sword," he complimented. "Can you still walk?" Neville asked, his strong arms more than capable of carrying Johnson's hefty frame. "Do you need me to carry you? I don't think I need it yet." "Indeed, those who can follow the king are all formidable," Johnson replied, his belief in the supremacy of power unwavering. He was thoroughly convinced by Neville's prowess. With a physique strong enough to eliminate mobile units single-handedly, Neville was a force to be reckoned with. Neville, reverting to his shy Gryffindor demeanor, scratched his head and smiled sheepishly. Meanwhile, Credence ushered the other wizards into the fireplace for their departure, struggling to contain the surge of silence threatening to overwhelm him. The dark aura continued to seep out, but Credence, with great determination, managed to suppress it. Maintaining his emotional stability was crucial. Johnson's perception of Credence had shifted. He now recognized Credence's capability to safeguard Nagini. "Wait, I'm going to ask," Credence declared, refusing to leave just yet. He staggered over to a researcher, looked him in the eye, and demanded, "How did you find this place?" The wizard told us," the researcher confessed, terror-stricken. The revelation that a wizard's betrayal had led them here was astonishing. Chapter 776, Pressure and Threat. The minister, unaware that his elite forces had been decimated, stood before John, boasting of his own greatness. "Wizards are nothing but a group of parasites in other countries," he said with an air of arrogance. "Our task is to exploit these parasites." "The power of magic is indeed surprising," he continued, his face alight with fanaticism. "You think I know nothing about wizards? On the contrary, I know far too much. Beyond their laughable magic, wizards possess treasures that are highly coveted." His obsession was palpable, as if he had stumbled upon something groundbreaking. "The gene for longevity," he revealed, barely able to contain his excitement. "Wizards live far longer than ordinary people." Glancing at his watch, the minister prepared to shatter the confidence of the wizard before him. "And technology can unlock the secret to the wizard's extended lifespan. I plan to capture a group of wizards to use as experimental subjects. Once successful, the wealthy will spare no expense to secure their own longevity." Wizards' longevity is evident in individuals like Bathilda Bagshot, whose life expectancy far exceeds that of ordinary people. Unlike nonagenarians who struggle with mobility, Newt Scamander, a magzoologist in his 90s, still ventures into primeval jungles for research. The minister's initial aggression towards wizards was motivated by his desire to create a longevity potion by studying their genes. John's arrival only provided him with more opportunities to implement his plan. "With one hand in energy and the other in biology," the minister said, slowly bringing his hands together, envisioning himself as the future's new ruler. He laughed. John exchanged a glance with Penelo, both wondering if the man was delusional. Penelo mentioned it was her first encounter with someone who talked to themselves in such a manner. "Sorry to interrupt," John finally said, unable to tolerate the minister's fanciful ramblings any longer. "If there's nothing of importance, I don't think we need to continue this conversation. We're ready to leave." "Leave? Where?" The minister stopped laughing, puzzled. Had John not understood his intentions? "You think you can leave? If you don't willingly disclose the location of the magic crystal mine, perhaps I'll consider making you one of my subordinates." John sighed at the minister's overconfidence. "I believe we can leave now," he said calmly to Penelo. "Let's go." "Whoever moves will fall," the minister taunted, confident in his control. Yet, when Penelo stood and followed John, nothing happened. The minister's commands fell on deaf ears. Pressing his watch in frustration, the minister shouted, "Pull your trigger, you fools," but his orders were ignored. John, reaching the door, turned and said, "Quite the little trick, wasn't it?" The soldiers turned their guns towards the minister, who was now in a state of panic. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "I don't think they can hear you," John said, tapping his ear mockingly. Wizards' methods are not limited to mere tricks, but also include magic. He had used a spell to make the soldiers see him as their leader. "What do you think I should do with you?" John asked playfully. "This is an act of aggression against the United States," the minister blustered, invoking the name of his country in a bid to intimidate John. He threatened, "I don't. Regardless of the method you use, you can't simply declare war on a country," he said, his tone initially arrogant but then softening as he realized his approach might have been too presumptuous. "It would be best if you let me go. Otherwise, the so-called magical world will face war." He believed John and his team were seeking peace, yet his own words had carried too much pride. "I can overlook this incident," he offered, his attitude now more conciliatory. "That won't be necessary," John replied with a chuckle, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "Some things really shouldn't be approached naively." With a wave of his hand, a video recorder flew over under the American flag. After opening it to confirm its contents, John looked at the footage of the extremely arrogant minister and smiled. "You do look better on camera." Realizing that John had been deceiving him from the start, the minister watched as John turned off the video recorder and bowed slightly. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Minister. You've provided us with ample material to cast you in the role of the villain." "Are you using me?" The minister, now understanding the manipulation, was furious. "You're playing with fire. A mere wizard is nothing compared to the might of a country. I won't let you get away with this," he threatened. John, feigning surprise, retorted, "Do you actually believe you have a future after this?" He continued, "I mentioned throwing you off the Statue of Liberty, remember?" "I am the Secretary of Defense of the United States," the minister protested, his face draining of color. "Unfortunately, I never joke," John replied, glancing at the members of the Wizard Mobile Unit. "I believe you're familiar with the Statue of Liberty." "We are," a team member responded, only to be silenced by the minister's panicked plea, "Let me go, I won't oppose you." "It's too late for that," John declared, snapping his fingers. A spell of spiritual magic enveloped the team members. "Take Mr. Minister to the Statue of Liberty for a cordless bungee jump. I believe he'll enjoy it." As John walked away, the minister was seized, struggling in vain and screaming for help, but the building was deserted, his cries unheard. The team members escorted the minister to the Statue of Liberty, where the cold wind greeted them. John remarked to Penello, "Today was an excellent exercise in diplomacy." The passage closed behind them, leaving Penello feeling disoriented. "What exactly did I do today?" she wondered, considering it the most bizarre diplomatic mission ever. Meanwhile, over another American city, the minister found himself unable to escape, standing at the torch of the Statue of Liberty. Behind him, a member of the anti-wizard mobile unit, previously his secret weapon, stepped forward and kicked him off the torch. As he fell, the reality of his situation hit him alongside the cold wind. His body crashed into the ground below the iconic American monument, his life ending in an instant. The team members, having completed their task, regained their senses, confused about their location. "Why are we here?" they questioned, realizing they had somehow traveled from Washington to New York in an impossibly short time. Back at the Ministry of Magic, Penello was still trying to make sense of her role in the day's events. Percy, curious about the outcome, asked, "How did the diplomacy go?" Is it okay?" Penello's uncertain response reflected her confusion and the surreal nature of their diplomatic efforts. Percy pondered with a hint of skepticism. "All right?" How was he to interpret such a response? Representatives from the Magical Congress of America had arrived bearing grim news. The Plymouth colony had been invaded by Muggles. This revelation stunned the wizards who had hoped to remain in their ancestral lands. With Grindelwald's disappearance, the question loomed large. Why was their wizarding haven still under threat? Seizing the moment, the Ministry of Magic revisited the proposal of establishing a city exclusively for wizards. In light of the current dangers, even those who had previously remained unregistered were now coming forward. If even their traditional gathering places were no longer safe, what reason was there to stay? John couldn't help but laugh upon receiving the update from Tang Mi. The situation inadvertently facilitated the assembly of wizards. Now, all that remained was to wait. In one aspect, the minister, notorious for his deceit, had spoken the truth. His demise would be perceived as a provocation by America. The time had come for a genuine diplomatic negotiation, a chance to redefine their stance and perhaps find a new beginning. This period marked a critical juncture, not just for the individuals involved, but for the entire wizarding community. The threat to their way of life had never been more palpable, prompting a collective reevaluation of their place in the world. Amidst the turmoil, the prospect of a wizarding city offered a glimmer of hope, a potential sanctuary where they could thrive away from the prying eyes of the Muggle world. Yet, the path forward was fraught with challenges, requiring not just diplomatic finesse, but a unified front among wizards themselves. Chapter 77. Then Declare War. Mornings in America are usually sensational, but this particular morning, under the Statue of Liberty, was exceptionally so. The discovery of a mangled body, coupled with the detention of a pair of wizard mobile units on suspicion of murdering high-ranking officials, sent shockwaves across the nation. Evidence and footprints at the scene pointed towards this group's involvement. However, their ignorance of the events, confirmed by both polygraph tests and Veritaserum, deepened the mystery. The FBI, led by a determined detective, delved into the investigation of this sensational case. The information on these individuals has been erased, the detective revealed, indicating that their identities had been wiped from the system by the highest authority. The mention of Francis as the one behind the erasure added layers of complexity and confusion to the case. It seemed that they were dealing with a force possibly formed in secret by the government, yet the individuals involved had no recollection of their actions or the events leading to the minister's death. Amidst the investigation, the female detective approached the lead with urgent news. "The president wants to see you," she whispered, her words adding weight to the already tense atmosphere. The implications of the minister's death and the potential involvement of parties in the government were not lost on the FBI head, who could only exclaim in frustration. Parallel to the investigation, Yuri Orlov, a businessman expanding his ventures into war-torn regions for diamonds, found himself reflecting on the precariousness of his situation. Despite heeding Makoff's warning, the rapid downfall of his backer was unforeseen. The directness of the collapse prompted Orlov to consider laying low, realizing the volatility of his current position. His contemplation led him to plan a temporary retreat, aiming to return once the turmoil subsided. With properties worldwide, he saw this as an opportunity for travel. Deciding on his next move, Orlov reached out to Watson, proposing a trip to Sokovia under the guise of a men's party, with the hidden agenda of exploring business opportunities amidst the brewing conflict. His call to Watson, offering a plane ride and the allure of adventure, was a testament to Orlov's cunning. He understood the value of aligning with influential figures for protection and saw potential in the unrest in Sokovia for lucrative deals. Meanwhile, the president's frustration with the delayed discovery of the minister's death under the Statue of Liberty was palpable. The tension in the room, marked by the president's throbbing veins and the FBI head's apprehension, underscored the gravity of the situation and the urgency of unraveling the mystery behind the sensational events that morning in America. Sweat beaded on the official's forehead as he reported, "There's no record of them leaving Washington, and aviation has no record of the minister's private jet arriving. Even if it flew, there should be traces. These people seem oblivious to the minister's demise, and they're unaware of the secret force he created. Everything is too peculiar." The minister issued an order yesterday to blockade an area in New York. Shen Sheng, the person in charge, added gravely, "I suspect his death is connected to that." The president's expression darkened upon hearing this. The situation was being kept under wraps as much as possible to minimize impact. The revelation could dominate headlines. He was aware that the minister had intended to negotiate with a wizard, likely under the guise of negotiation while planning to apprehend them. "We need to mitigate the impact of this situation as swiftly as possible," the president stated, emphasizing the urgency. The person in charge was taken aback, sensing the president's desire to distance himself from the matter. Upon further investigation, they uncovered the minister's secret operation, codenamed Ratcatcher. However, details were scarce, and it seemed only the president might have the full picture. This raised suspicions about the president's involvement. The president was frustrated. He had tasked the minister with handling the wizard issue independently to avoid direct involvement. Yet, the situation had escalated, resulting in the minister's death and the disappearance of the negotiating wizards. The president considered this a direct affront, pondering if it signified a declaration of war by the wizards against the most powerful nation. "I thought I was being lenient, but this is audacity," the president muttered, eyeing a button on his desk capable of devastating consequences. That evening, as the fireplace in the presidential palace roared to life unexpectedly, the president was about to summon assistance when a voice emerged from the flames. "Good evening, Mr. President." The president, taken aback, quickly regained his composure and faced the flaming visage. "Wizard?" he inquired. "Yes." The flaming face replied, "I believe we were supposed to meet yesterday." "You're responsible for Francis's death?" the president asked, frowning. Strictly speaking, his own men were the cause. I was merely a victim, John responded calmly. Victim? The president scoffed, locking eyes with John. You're implicated in the death of a Secretary of Defense. John mentioned Magic Crystal Island casually, hinting at the aggressive actions taken by the president's country, including the threat of nuclear warfare. I'd rather not discuss that, the president retorted sharply. John's tone held a hint of amusement as he accused the president of avoiding the issue, likening him to an ostrich ignoring the reality of the attack on the wizards in New York. The president, refusing to admit any wrongdoing or acknowledge the scandal, asserted their right to arrest John for entering the country illegally. However, he offered a chance for negotiation, suggesting a meeting the following day. For the upcoming negotiations, it is imperative that the wizard be present, the president stated. It appears there has been a significant misunderstanding between us, he added. Misunderstanding? John thought to himself, amused by the notion. Mistakes could be forgiven, but what transpired between them went beyond simple misunderstandings. As someone who harbored no intentions of making life easy for hunters, John was not inclined towards a peaceful resolution. He retorted, "And what if I choose to refuse?" "Your reputation in the magical world is already tarnished, not even comparable to that of goblins," the president replied. Although unfamiliar with what a goblin was, he sensed the comparison was meant to demean him. With a sneer, he declared, "Then brace yourself for a declaration of war from the United States." Did a mere wizard truly believe he could stand against a nation? Upon hearing the president's response, John knew he had successfully provoked the reaction he desired. With a satisfied smile, he extinguished the flames in the fireplace, signaling the end of their conversation. Meanwhile, the president's expression darkened significantly. Chapter 778, Wong unconcerned. Go again? Penello was taken aback. I just got back yesterday, and now I'm off to America again today? And we're flying? Just endure it this time, John said, his slender fingers wrapped around the elder wand as he gave it a shake. He chuckled. The tougher, the better. Aren't you coming this time? Percy asked, concerned for his girlfriend. I'll be heading somewhere else, John reassured Percy, adding that the world's perception of wizards needed to change. After everyone had departed, John waved his hand in the study of silver hand manner, summoning 2 books adorned in black and silver. As the pages flipped, John perused them thoughtfully. Wizard magic is still too gentle, he mused. The Book of Darkness contained many taboos, but also laid a foundation for a broad spectrum of magic, likely limited by the scarcity of wizards. No magic had been devised to effectively end wars, yet in another world where demon hunters roamed, magicians wielded spells capable of altering the course of battles at a great cost. Their magic required the absorption of vast amounts of energy, risking the caster's vitality if insufficient. There's a distinction between magic and sorcery, John pondered as the books vanished. In the City of Wizards, we must expand our magical disciplines. He had plans in place, recognizing that the Battle of Magic Crystal Island showcased the wizard's resolve, but failed to deter the greedy. As 2 Protoss playfully chased each other around the bookshelf, they accidentally dislodged the medal of Merlin. Hector, in a panic, caught the medal, cushioning its fall with a blanket and sighing in relief upon seeing it unharmed. However, Hermo then landed squarely on Hector's stomach, nearly knocking the wind out of him. The commotion caught John's attention, who levitated the Protoss, allowing them to joyfully swim through the air, unbound by gravity. The Protoss Guardians have proven their worth, John observed, recalling their formidable prowess during the battle, where they demonstrated strength far beyond that of wizards and muggles, even tossing tanks as if they were toys. He intended to deploy the Protoss Guardians across the magical kingdom, confident in their ability to fend off any threat short of mass destruction. Picking up the Protoss, John smiled. You are to become the iron wall of the wizarding world. Though they didn't fully grasp his words, the Protoss were elated, basking in the glory of their creator's approval. With a touch of his wand, John absorbed the Protoss into it, then stepped out into the garden of Silverhand Manor. Raising his wand, he commanded, Go to all places where magic dwells. The night sky brightened as the Elder Wand emitted a golden light, sending 50 meteors across the globe, each carrying a Protoss guardian. At another meeting, Penello's demeanor had shifted. She no longer felt the need to don Muggle attire, confidently entering the conference room in her black wizard robe. Scanning the room, she noted the absence of the president. Indeed, it was uncommon for a country's leader to attend such diplomatic engagements. Miss Penello Cravat stood confidently before the diplomat, who was evidently well-versed in wizarding affairs. Penello, with a calm gaze, prepared herself for what she knew would be a challenging negotiation. The discussions quickly heated up, with the American side raising concerns about an assassination, which Penello attributed to rogue wizards, a matter she claimed had been communicated long ago. The conversation then shifted to the contentious issue of Magic Crystal Island, further straining the talks. The disappearance of a wizard and issues surrounding the wizard's mobile unit were also hot topics. Eventually, the discussion turned to Minister Francis, demanding an explanation for his death, which was believed to be at the hands of a wizard. Penello, undeterred, presented a video revealing the American government's intentions to conduct inhumane experiments on wizards. She challenged the diplomat, "Don't you think this requires an explanation?" The mention of Francis, coupled with the video, left the diplomats pale, realizing the gravity of the situation and its potential to become a major scandal, tarnishing the country's image. The American diplomat's plea to delete the video was firmly rejected by Penello, who insisted that the truth would inevitably become a scandal. As the situation escalated, the president, faced with undeniable evidence against Francis and under pressure to preserve America's image, issued an ultimatum: suppress the scandal or face war. Penello, upon hearing this, stood up, expressing her desire to avoid war. The diplomat, exhausted, admitted his limited understanding of wizards but urged Penello to reconsider, hinting at the potential regret of underestimating the wizard's resolve. Penello, unmoved, declared readiness for war, shocking the diplomat, who couldn't fathom why wizards would challenge the world's most powerful military and advanced technology. Penello, with unwavering faith, simply stated, "The king doesn't care." This belief in their king's promise to avoid war in the wizarding world was a source of strength for her and her people. Meanwhile, John stood by the sea, contemplating the arrogance of the world's strongest country. As he transformed, his face covered in black scales, he remarked on the suitability of the sunny noon for flying. The sight of the huge black dragon soaring towards that formidable nation underscored Penello's stance. In the face of their king's promise, the might of any country was irrelevant. Chapter 779, Shadow on the Air Force Base. In the world's most powerful nation, arrogance and pride still prevailed. However, the wizarding world's counterattack was on the horizon. Clivet, the diplomat, called out, catching up to the witch who seemed out of place in her surroundings. "Don't bet against the country." "You are a man of conscience, Mr. Root," Penello responded, turning to face the diplomat who had offered his advice once more. Her expression was resolute. "But you shouldn't desecrate the truth and magic." "This is diplomacy," Mr. Root explained. "We strive for the best interests of our country, leveraging our own strengths." "Weakness can only lead to acceptance," Root continued, pushing back against the opposition. He tried to persuade her further. I know, this isn't favorable for wizards. But that's how it is. In Eastern countries, those who are bullied in their weakness find their tormentors revealing their own misdeeds once they gain strength." Root sighed, adding, "This is a game between nations. We must demonstrate our strength to our own people while maintaining a low profile internationally." "You can deny everything," Penello said, locking eyes with Root, emphasizing each word, "but magic is not a mere trick. Magic." Root found the notion absurd, feeling both helpless and speechless. "Do you realize that technology is humanity's most powerful weapon? As we approach the 21st century, we are stronger than we ever imagined," he continued. "By staying under the radar, you can continue to exist in various countries, but if war breaks out..." A hint of regret flashed in Root's eyes as he said, "The United States will rally other nations to expel wizards. Believe me, every country wants to claim wizards for themselves. You'll be imprisoned and studied." Root confessed, privy to too many governmental secrets. He understood that, although wizards' abilities might seem inferior to technology, They could offer nations mysterious forces akin to special operations units. If utilized correctly, they could unexpectedly alter situations. Wizards were ideal subjects for experimentation, being stronger than humans yet physiologically similar. They could serve as resources for various prohibited experiments. Out of humanitarian concern, he wished to avoid this, yet Penelo remained steadfast. She looked up at the sky, remarking, "It's getting dark, Mr. Root." "What?" Root was puzzled. The sun was still high in the sky, far from setting. "You can't stop this. No one can," Penelo stated, her voice devoid of emotion, resembling a machine. "Now is the darkest hour. Use all means to stop it. Feel powerless, collapse, and despair." "Is that a curse?" Root wondered if she had lost her sanity. "You have 1 hour. Use all your strength before darkness falls," Penelo advised, seemingly oblivious to his confusion. Then, suddenly, her eyes cleared, and she looked around in surprise. "Your Excellency Wick?" she muttered to herself. Then, turning to Root, she said awkwardly, "I'm leaving." "Wait," Root called out, but Penelo had already vanished using a phantom spell. "It must be reported truthfully," Root concluded, disappointed with the outcome of the negotiation. When he relayed everything to the president merely smiled dismissively. "A pompous mouse," the president remarked contemptuously. "What else?" "She spoke for an hour," Root shared, still perplexed. "The darkest hour is coming. Let us use all means to stop it." "Oh," the president smiled, unconcerned. "Is it more wizard tricks?" "Is this a curse?" Root inquired, seeking clarity. The president waved his hand indifferently. "Since they don't appreciate the opportunity we've given them, they can't blame us." "We are justice, Root," the president declared, signaling an ultimatum. Root, feeling powerless to influence such a significant decision, could only comply. The president opened a document detailing the locations of wizarding places around the world. He muttered to himself, "Wizard?" He seemed unimpressed by Thai. He notion of wizards, having concluded from recent interactions that while they possessed some magical abilities, making them formidable in individual combat, they were significantly less effective in team scenarios, as vulnerable as a blank sheet of paper. Meanwhile, orders were dispatched to various locations, including secret organizations. A black man, upon receiving his instructions, showed a moment of frustration, sweeping everything off his desk in a fit of anger. Outside his office, a red-haired girl leaned against the wall, observing her boss. She noted that, despite the similarities to her previous employment, her current boss showed more humanity. She carefully adjusted a pink bear's bow, a gift from a family she had encountered, which included a blonde-haired girl who resembled an angel, a playful father, and a dignified mother. This memory brought back a sense of familial warmth, and she treasured the bear as her most important possession. At an Air Force base in the United States, located miles away from any civilian towns and known for its secret experiments, a man prepared to leave, swiping his access card. A dark-skinned second lieutenant called out to him, demanding he return to what he derogatorily referred to as a rat cage. The man, taken aback, attempted to clarify his position, but the second lieutenant was unyielding. Checking his pocket watch and noting the time was almost 1 o'clock, the man warned the lieutenant not to attempt any violence. Suddenly, the lieutenant found himself immobilized, a wand pressed against his chest by the man, who apologized, explaining he was on a tight schedule set by his king. He then criticized the lieutenant for not compensating him for his assistance and insights into certain vulnerabilities, before bypassing him to free other wizards held captive on the base. Using the spell Alohomora, he unlocked the electronic door of a cell, revealing imprisoned wizards who initially mistook him for another muggle. Introducing himself as Gauss, a peace-loving wizard acting under the orders of his king, he announced their liberation. The wizards inside, thrilled at the mention of a king, pledged their allegiance to this mysterious figure. Gauss, seeing their eagerness, prepared them for departure using a magical scarf that transported them away upon touch. However, Gauss did not leave immediately. He approached another cell, where a young man was held behind transparent glass. With a jest, he greeted the young man as the last saint, indicating another rescue mission was about to begin. Webb Dillon gazed upward, his expression one of bewilderment. Upon seeing Gauss, a smile broke across his face. "Is he coming?" Webb murmured to himself. Indeed, "It's time for his arrival," Gauss replied as he opened the door. However, Webb showed no inclination to leave. He looked at Gauss with a warmth in his eyes and said, "Tell me, will magic be extraordinary today? Are you offering me Garen in exchange?" Gauss retorted with disdain. "You lack the funds, yet you seek forbidden knowledge?" "I apologize, I don't," Webb admitted with a grin. "But perhaps you could enlighten me." "I'm not here to kill you," Gauss stated firmly, shaking his head. "My employer didn't hire me for that purpose." "I'm aware," Webb responded, "but every great spectacle requires an audience." As Webb was once again exposed to the light within his confined space, he spoke as if in a trance. "I sense that he is nearing." "What an oddity," Gauss muttered. He then approached Webb, grasped him by the shoulders, and with a swift motion, they apparated to the entrance of the base. "Consider this a gift," Gauss said before vanishing into thin air. Webb stared into the distance at the approaching shadow and smiled. He slowly knelt, spread his arms towards the heavens, and laughed heartily, proclaiming, "Let magic rise to greatness once more, my king." With a fervor akin to a devout follower prostrating before the throne, Webb greeted the encroaching shadows with a kiss, as reverently as one might kiss the toes of the Witch King. The Air Force Base, having noticed this peculiar scene, raised their guns in warning. Suddenly, the sky darkened, and plants around the base withered instantaneously. An ominous shadow loomed over the area. Without any forewarning, the gunmen began to collapse one by one. The darkest hour had indeed arrived. Chapter 780. In the darkest hour, the Witch King destroys the world. First came the demise of plants, followed by animals, and finally, humans. The earth mirrored the body of a colossal being, whose shadow was an abyss that devoured life. With each flap of his wings, he sent death further afield. Soldier, a base captain returning from his errands, honked his horn at the checkpoint. Expressing his dissatisfaction to the deserted pavilion, he muttered, "Where is everyone?" Frustrated and angry, he exited his vehicle, slamming the door shut, and approached the pavilion to open the gate. However, upon pushing the door, he found it obstructed. After several attempts, his annoyance peaked, prompting him to investigate the cause. What he saw left him speechless. "What the?" he exclaimed, his gaze fixed on a soldier who appeared to be asleep. No amount of force could rouse the individual. The soldier's posture suggested a sudden loss of consciousness. Sensing something amiss, the captain rushed back to his car to make a call, but received no response. It was one thing for a single person not to answer, but the silence from a group was alarming. With urgency, he drove through the barrier and headed towards the Air Force Base. Upon arrival, he was greeted by the sight of a lifeless body at the entrance. Further inside, he discovered more personnel in similar states. Soldiers, clerks, researchers, all motionless. From the lowest ranks to the generals, no one was spared. Even a cactus, known for its resilience, had succumbed, its vitality drained. What's happening here? A terrorist attack? A bioweapon leak? He wondered, observing that everyone remained in the positions they were in at the time of their demise. Some were even in the midst of daily activities, like carrying lunch. A faint bell sound redirected his attention. It was coming from the base commander's phone. With apprehension, he answered. "Report to the Ratcatcher," came the president's voice. The captain, identified as Hoyle Mack, reported the grim situation. The entire Air Force Base in northern New Jersey had perished, save for him. The president, taken aback, demanded details. America was facing its darkest hour, overshadowed by a mysterious entity. News of an unidentified flying object, UFO, invading America soon followed, leaving a trail of lifelessness in its wake. Its path was set towards Washington, the nation's heart. The president ordered an immediate investigation. Surveillance footage revealed a black shadow sweeping across the base, instantly claiming lives without prejudice. The scene was chilling, surpassing the horror of any known weapon. Amidst the tense atmosphere, news arrived that a probe plane had crashed. The pilot, like the others, had died suddenly, leaving behind a final image of the plane losing control as it neared its destination. The implications were clear. Whatever was causing this devastation was powerful enough to bring America to its knees, challenging the nation's very survival. A huge black dragon flashed past in the clouds, causing the pilot's vital signs to vanish as the plane plummeted. "What is that?" a high-ranking general asked, but no one could provide an answer. In a quiet corner, a voice murmured, "This is the darkest hour." All eyes turned to the man who spoke. It was Root. Before the diplomat could depart, the area was declared an emergency zone. "Do you know what that is?" the president asked, fixing his gaze on Root. Feeling the weight of the question, Root struggled to reply. "Now is the darkest hour. We must use all means to stop it, even as we feel powerless, on the verge of collapse and despair." He repeated Pinello's words verbatim. The room fell silent, and the president's expression twitched with incredulity. "You mean it was conjured by a wizard?" "Probably so," Root nodded. The notion of a wizard being responsible was not entirely unexpected. The United States had recently received an ultimatum from a wizard, and now, as darkness descended, all life seemed at risk. In a fit of anger, the president commanded, "Send fighter jets and shoot that thing down." It seemed the only viable option. The nearest fighter jets took off, racing across the sky towards the Black Dragon. Armed with high-caliber weapons, they opened fire before even getting close. Flames targeted the dragon's underbelly, and for a moment, a pilot smiled, thinking they had succeeded. However, his smile quickly faded. The attacked area remained unscathed, and the dragon seemed utterly indifferent to their efforts. With a mere flap of its wings, the dragon accelerated, leaving the fighter jets struggling to keep up. The jets launched more powerful missiles, but as they neared the dragon, they exploded prematurely, forcing the fighters to maintain their distance. Suddenly, a massive tail emerged from the clouds, cleaving one of the jets in two. The pilot had no chance to eject, and met his end in the shadow of the falling debris. The remaining pilots watched in horror, realizing not even missiles could harm the dragon. As one pilot prepared for another attack, the dragon's tail moved too swiftly to evade, and his jet was obliterated. Back at the command center, officials had placed their hopes on the missiles. When they saw the missiles strike the dragon, they stood up, shouting and cheering. However, Root and the president remained fixated on the screen. As the smoke cleared, their brief moment of celebration vanished. The Black Dragon remained unharmed, and the two fighter jets were destroyed as effortlessly as if they were mere toys. The dragon's leisurely flight seemed to mock their efforts, saying, "Use all means." The wizard's revenge had arrived, demanding retribution for their arrogance. "Send more fighter jets," the president ordered, his voice betraying a hint of fear. "Mr. President, another base has lost contact," he was informed, causing him to stagger, nearly falling. The loss of 3 bases in quick succession, along with an untold number of lives, underscored the severity of the situation. This was no mere exercise. The Black Dragon was heading towards Washington, threatening millions of lives. The president felt immense pressure from all sides. Yet he refused to consider compromise. "We are America, great America. As the world's beacon, how can we bow to a wizard?" he declared. "Order fighter jets to carry out airstrikes. The threat must be eliminated in the sky." "But," someone started to object. "There are no buts," the president roared. "Knock that damn thing out of the sky. Do whatever it takes to stop that monster from reaching here. Quick now!" His fierce demeanor was a stark departure from his usual composure, driven by the constant whisper of urgency in his ear. "Nothing is as frustrating as a nightmare that you cannot escape. I must personally select the next president. The American people, who admire heroes, will never cast their votes for someone perceived as weak. To compromise is to admit to mistakes, and that would spell the end of any hope for the presidency. No, that is not an option. I have spent years cultivating positive relationships, garnering support from political parties, and securing votes. All of my efforts cannot be in vain. They are a testament to my dedication. Wizards, with their arbitrary commands and wands, may seem formidable, but they are still mortal. There is no being that cannot be obliterated by a nuclear bomb. If one is not enough, then we'll use 2. The president's expression is stern, resolved to use any means necessary to defend the honor of the great United States, the beacon of the world. At his command, fighter jets tear through the sky, a sight that causes citizens to look up, sensing that something is amiss on this dark day. It is in this moment of crisis that the Witch King meets his end.